Good evening, and welcome to the Sherwood Park and District Chamber of Commerce Second Political Forum for the 2021 Strathcona County Municipal Election. I'm Darryl Popick, the President of the Chamber, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our second virtual forum. Tonight we are hosting candidates of the rural wards 5, 6, 7, as well as the mayoral candidates. I would like once again to let you know how disappointed we are that we cannot have this event in person. But our objective tonight in this virtual setting is to help you, the residents, to form an opinion on all the candidates attending to make an informed decision at the ballot box. I would like to thank each candidate for putting their names forward to run in this election. I would also like to thank you, the residents of Strathcona County, for joining us tonight. It is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Terry Lynn Bougie. Terry Lynn is an accomplished lawyer here in Sherwood Park and a past president of the Chamber. Terry Lynn has moderated several forums for us over the years, including last night's event for wards 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8. I know she will once again do a great job tonight. Terry Lynn, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to our 2021 Municipal Political Forum for the Strathcona County Rural Wards 5, 6, and 7, followed by the 5 mayoralty candidates. This political forum has been organized by the Sherwood Park and District Chamber of Commerce. It's a cost recovery only program by the Chamber that is paid for equally by each of the participating candidates. My name is Terry Lynn Bougie and I'll be your moderator for the evening. The Sherwood Park and District Chamber of Commerce respectfully acknowledges we are located on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional land of Indigenous peoples that have lived and thrived in this place, including the Blackfoot, Gros Ventre, Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Nakota Sioux, and later the Métis. The Sherwood Park and District Chamber of Commerce supports vaccination in the fight against COVID-19. This public forum event falls under an essential service categorization as elections and related activities, which are considered out of scope for the Government of Alberta's restriction exemption program. Please rest assured that all public health restrictions in Order 44/2021 are being adhered to for indoor occupancy, social distancing, sanitation, and required masks or face shields when candidates are not speaking. Tonight's forum has a full agenda. We've designed the forum in the following manner to allow all candidates equal opportunity to deliver their messages. Here are the rules and regulations of tonight's forum. The candidates will be seated alphabetically at the speaker's table, starting from the right, facing the cameras. Candidates have 90 seconds for opening remarks. The timer will give a 20-second warning with a yellow card and then a red card at the end of the allotted time. No candidate will be allowed more than their allotted time, and you can be asked to stop speaking if you don't spot the red card. One question from the Chamber of Commerce that's provided in advance will be answered by each candidate. Candidates have 3 minutes to answer that question. Candidates will each be having 2 minutes after the question period for added rebuttal or to summarize their platform. I have jurisdiction in relation to all matters. Candidates are asked to wear their face mask or face shield when they're not speaking. There will be a 5-minute break between wards for transition and sanitation. For the mayoralty candidates tonight, they'll have 90 seconds for each of their opening remarks and 90 seconds for one chamber question that's provided to them in advance. Questions from the audience for the mayoralty candidates will be taken from the Zoom chat box. I'll address those questions to another candidate at my discretion so as to keep the time as much as possible for each candidate on a relevant and equal basis. The answers to those questions are limited to a maximum of 90 seconds. Chamber of Commerce administration will screen for issues such as profanity and rule out of order any questions that are deemed inappropriate, offensive, or derogatory. The mayoralty candidates will each have 3 minutes after the question period for added rebuttal or to summarize their platform for you. I'm pleased to welcome in alphabetical order the following candidates for Ward 5. Leighton Larson, Daryl Marler, and Ken Timperley. Aaron Nelson has sent his regrets this evening. He was unable to join us due to a prior commitment. Candidates, I'll draw your attention to my left to Kenneth Hawes. He's our timekeeper this evening. He will hold up a yellow card to signal that 20 seconds remains in your speaking time and hold up a red card when your speaking time has concluded. we'll ask you to respectfully finish speaking at that time. The candidates drew in advance for speaking order this evening, and I'll please welcome Leighton Larson to the podium for your opening remarks, sir.
Good evening. My name is Leighton Larson. I'm looking forward to be able to work with council. I believe my leadership by example, experience in governance, working on boards and committees over the years, my volunteerism, my strong work ethic, my active listening skills, and I bring applicable skill sets that will strengthen council and be an asset in working towards the interest of my ward. I believe strong and responsible financial stewardship that gives our citizens value in their hard-earned tax dollars, maintaining and improving our quality of life that maintains Strathcona County to be a great place to live, work, and play. Social and economic strengths is one of our keys to success. We know that a strong and safe, stable community makes strong and stable people. This is what employers are looking for. We need stable and educated workforce to grow our current industries, to bring other businesses into our communities, to support our entrepreneurs, to grow and support our agricultural industry as it is going through a generational transition. We need to expand and diverse our local economy, spend our monies in ways that strengthen multiple industries within our county. Please, if you'd like to know more about me, visit my website, larsonward5.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. And next, we'll hear from Ken Timperley with his opening remarks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and fellow candidates. Before starting, I would like to thank the Sherwood Park Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum and making COVID safe and respecting safe distancing. My name is Ken Timperley, and I've lived in Strathcona for more than 50 years. I've raised family here, and they are raising their families here as well. Over the past 50 years, many changes have occurred in Strathcona County. To some people, change is good. Some tend to disagree. In times of election, change is imminent. New people get voted in that have new ideas and bring a renewed sense of belonging to the ward they are representing. This election is different. From previous elections, as one of the main topics of discussion was COVID-19 and the associated rules that surround COVID, such as masks, passports, and vaccinations. We as Canadians only want the best for our families and friends and strive to make that happen. But the amount of division and doubt in people that are focused on COVID-19 is clouding this election. As people are casting their ballots, please take the time to educate yourself on the best candidate for the job. Some candidates are accountants and small business owners, and some are tradesmen, but it's how each individual receives life experiences and applies it to everyday living. On October 18th, I asked voters to make a clear and unbiased decision on who they want to see leading and listening to them for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timperley. And now we'll hear from Daryl Marler with his opening remarks, please.
Good evening. Daryl Marler, candidate Ward 5, Strathcona County for councillor. I want to thank the Sherwood Park and District Chamber of Commerce for putting on this. It is an honor to be here. I'm a lifetime Strathcona County resident, third generation. My grandfather farmed in north of Greenland Nursery, and my uncle farmed where Emerald Hills now resides. My father, Alan, built the first covered arena in Ardrossan and was a bus driver and farmer. I had grades 1 to 12 in Ardrossan. I helped fundraise the Bison football program to get started and have played in all the recreation facilities. I'm active in the Alberta Appaloosa Association for several years and on several parent boards. Worked with industrial plants, many of them in the heartland. Successful in business and farming. Very proud to have spent all my life in Strathcona County, as I have traveled every road during my lifetime. I've dealt with every department in Strathcona County. I know the county and am prepared to work towards making the county the best place to live, work, play, and thrive.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. The candidates will now have 3 minutes to answer the following question that was given to them in advance. What do the residents of Ward 5 feel are the important issues in this election? What do they want from their councillor over the next 4 years? How will you balance the needs of Ward 5 residents with the needs of all residents of Strathcona County in your decision making? First, we'll hear from Mr. Timperley.
Going door to door and listening to what people would like to see change for the next 4 years has been a learning curve for myself. The residents in Ward 5 are definitely a diverse group: acreage owners, farmers, and townfolk. The majority of people have been vocal about taxes and about projects and money being spent by council, and are they prioritizing the needs over the wants? As Bremner and Cambrian are breaking ground and going forward, we as a county have to keep in mind that if a desired area is presented to people, they will populate the area and make that neighborhood their home. We as decision makers not only have to use common sense, but also we have to listen to our constituents in the ward and in all of Strathcona County. The point is also a topic that people have brought up in my door knocking. This is one project that I do support. I believe the ag societies of the county and other groups will benefit from this building, but bringing in different venues and attractions will also be an asset. But I also told people who asked my opinion that I was concerned with the cost associated with the point. Will it have to be built in stages? Perhaps a redesign of the building to reduce cost? This is one project that will be at the center of my attention if I am asked to represent Ward 5. There have been other issues brought to my attention as well. One resident was very vocal about bicycles that are ridden on our roads, especially on main roads such as Baseline and Range Road 222. Could we possibly make dedicated bike lanes, but on less traveled roads? Anything is possible as long as we listen to what the people in the county are concerned about. Balancing the Ward 5 needs with the rest of Strathcona is simple. Yes, the needs of our ward will be different from other wards, but we all want a solution in the end. And the only way to achieve this is to listen and to respect the needs of Strathcona County residents. Even though there are boundary lines separating the wards, there should never be walls from keeping solutions and achievements from being heard as one. The decisions that I make will be by educating myself from input by people of Ward 5 as well as Strathcona County, and a joint effort by administration and other councillors. I ask you on election day to make a choice that you are comfortable with. I have answered emails from people and talked to people on their doorsteps. I realize that a solid decision takes time to get to know the candidate and his or her values and visions. But I'm asking your vote on October 18th, and if elected, I will do my best to promote and represent Strathcona to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timperley. And now we'll hear from Leighton Larson, please.
What do people want from their councillors? Well, they want leadership, someone who is loyal and hardworking in their ward, responsible and accountable. I'm looking forward to working for Ward 5. How do I balance Ward 5 needs with the needs of Strathcona? I believe communication is the key to this. Communication with the citizens of Ward 5, communication with council to ensure that all wards are represented in our decisions. There may be times of indifference. I am one vote on council. I am one vote within my ward. I will work for the people of Ward 5. I shall represent them at council. Important issues. I have enjoyed listening to residents in Ward 5. It is a very large area and has very diverse views. There are some concerns from our residents. Here is a quick list. Speeding, land development, agricultural industry, road repair, tax dollar value, communications, the agricultural multi-use facilities, a map and maintaining of the trail system in their Ardrossan area and expansions of that trail system from Sherwood Park to Ardrossan and from Ardrossan to the Wilderness Center. Senior living, affordable housing, weed control, watersheds, and invasive species such as raccoons and boars. Seniors. I believe I believe the community is responsible to the seniors who built it. Strathcona County has a great relationship with the Heartland Housing Foundation. I believe this relationship is very important, and I will work hard to ensure that it stays strong and supportive for years to come. I'm a strong believer in age to place. Josephburg and Ardrossan are feeders for the hamlets for our seniors. There's a 55 club, there's exercise programs, and there's facilities that need to be supported. Not everybody wants to go to Sherwood Park or the big city. Transportation services, I'd like to see a strong dial-a-bus service and an affordable seniors accessible bus to our rural hubs. Speeding. Speeding is a concern in Ward 5. The refineries make the Highway 830 very, very busy. Now people are taking other routes to work, and people are complaining about the speeds who live along these range roads. They're complaining about garbage in the ditches, beer cans in the ditches. Both Josephburg and Dawson have complained about speeders. There's now people going through Josephburg to try to get around to that four-way stop. We need to address this before there's a tragic event. We need to work with refineries and education program and seek other ways to defer speeding. The agricultural facility, build it and they will come. We have been talking about this for decades. The assessments are done. After the last few years, a little bit of economic stimulus will bring short-term and long-term jobs. We talk about diversifying our economy. This is an investment in our agricultural industry and our hospitality industry. Our hotels have had a hard 2 years. Events bring money into our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Larson. And next we'll hear from Daryl Marler, please.
Where do we go from here? I believe we need to embrace the uniqueness of Ward 5. Heavy industry, light industry, large farms, small farms, rural plus hamlets, and farmers markets. I want to create an atmosphere so present and future generations can retain jobs and have a lifestyle they can enjoy in Strathcona County. I want to bring amenities to meet the needs of Ward 5, prioritize and make sure that they're fiscally responsible. Our Dawson, on my issues that were brought up to me during the door-to-door, daycares. We need to expand the senior center, library, pool, commercial entities, transit, and bike paths. Josephburg, traffic controls, possibly speed bumps to keep traffic from speeding through the community. There's a lot of young families in Josephburg now, and they mentioned that before they had a seasonal bike park, and that might help with recreation for their young kids. I want to promote rural community activities to highlight their successes. I want to work with the heartland industries. I want to find a solution to the traffic issues on the rural roads coming from the heartland. Secondly, I want to utilize the excess steam and CO2 to build greenhouses to grow food, so partnership up with the heartland industries. I want to cut red tape. Instead of having 10 steps to get something done, let's do 2. This will save time, money, and let's become more efficient, please. I want to pursue more built-in Strathcona County ideas. I want to work with internet providers to cover the gaps in internet services. People might think that this is hard to believe that we have gaps in the internet service, but we do. I want to hear what agriculture needs, and I want to act on it. The provincial government has a say in what can be done on the corner of Highway 16 and Range Road 215. It's called Death Corner. We need to address this. The Astleton flooding issue has been going on for 10 years. It needs attention. I want to challenge the Sherwood Park District Chamber of Commerce to help bring the World Cup of Hockey to Strathcona County. It is an international event bringing hockey players ages 18 to 85 from around the world to participate. There could be upwards of 1,200 to 2,000 people here. Ward 5 contributes the highest amount of tax revenue for Strathcona County. Ward 5 writes the check, Strathcona County cashes it. Ward 5 should get more than roads and snow removal. It's time for Ward 5 to shine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marler. Next, each of the candidates will come to the podium for 2 minutes for their closing remarks. We'll begin with Leighton Larson, please.
In closing, I'd like to make mention of the agricultural multi-use facility. I would like to address some of the comments I've seen in the paper and elsewhere. First, I do not own a horse, nor am I invested in the horse industry. However, It is a multi-use facility. It is not a pony palace. It's not for entitled people to parade their ponies around. The truth is, we have one of the highest horse ownerships in North America. 6.2 horses equal one full-time paying job. The horse industry is a $19 billion industry in Canada. It is the livelihood and the way of life for many people in Strathcona County. There's always lots of room for improvement, but we have a good thing going on here. People should be proud of the community in which they live. We have grown and continue to grow. We need to invest our money in infrastructure, our businesses, large and small, and our citizens, without overburdening everybody on taxes. There are some challenges. I am ready to face those challenges and represent the needs of Ward 5. There are some good conversation here tonight. Everyone will have to put some thought into their votes. I will ask you, when you're doing that thought, to look at people who are part of their community and act in the community for the better in the community. Lots of people will say they will start working for it. I have been working for it in the last 24 years as a volunteer, nonstop. In 2012, I was awarded the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal for volunteerism. I am ready. I am a son, a father, a husband, a veteran, a business owner, and a volunteer. I am ready to look forward for the next step in serving my community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Larson. Next, we'll hear from Daryl Marler at the podium for your closing remarks, please, sir.
Daryl Marler, candidate for Ward 5, Strathcona County Councillor. It's now up to you, Ward 5. You're voting for someone to show you leadership and vision. That is me. Do you want somebody who can't find the time to attend important events like this? Do you want somebody who's been here for a cup of coffee and thinks they know the county? Or do you want somebody who has spent a lifetime in this county? Always living here gives me insight into the needs and issues of this county, my county. I have the experience and I know the whole county picture, just not parts of it. I'm a very proud county resident. Family has always been a very important part in shaping who I am. I want to make this county a great place to raise a family and to create a livelihood. I've seen this county grow. It has expanded in certain ways, but it could always be better. I want to make sure this county is the best place to work, play, and live. Please take the time to vote, because it's very important. Daryl Marler, candidate for Ward 5 Councillor, will listen and bring knowledge and solutions moving forward. Your choice, October 18th, should be Daryl Marler, candidate Ward 5, Strathcona County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. And we'll hear from Ken Timperley with his closing remarks, please.
As I've been listening and observing other ward candidates from tonight and last night, I realize there's not a lot of focus on our youth of the county. They have also been affected by the last 20 months of home and school disruptions. I believe that perhaps short-term behavior will not be affected, but the county should have more people in place for support and counseling readily available for our children of the future. In closing, I would like to say that Strathcona is, in my opinion, the best place to live and to grow families. I wish when I was growing up I had spray parks and high school football teams and Millennium Place. Strathcona offers growth for families unlike other counties, and I agree when people say it is the best place to call home. There are approximately 7,400 people eligible to vote in Ward 5. I ask you tonight to exercise your right to vote and bring in the next councillor with no doubt in your mind who you want to see taking over Paul Smith's chair. Thank you again, Chamber of Commerce, for this forum. Good luck to the other candidates, and I look forward to your choice on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timperley. I have to say I don't know anything about rural areas, and it's probably a good thing that I don't live in Ward 5. I'm sure that Ward 5 is lovely. I don't mean it in that respect. I mean that there's very excellent candidates that are obviously long-term residents of the community with a deep commitment to representing the constituents. So for Those of you watching who are going to be voting in Ward 5, you have probably a very difficult choice ahead of you. I'd like to compliment you, gentlemen, for stepping forward, for committing yourself to a democratic process, for having very positive, informative campaigns. I'd like to thank you for your attendance. I appreciate it's very difficult to connect with your residents in the pandemic times that we have, and that everybody would prefer to be able to do this in person, and it's unfortunate we cannot. But I would like to thank you all, and I'd ask everybody watching to put their virtual hands together and thank the candidates for Ward 5 tonight. Thank you. We'll now take a 5-minute break while we bring in new candidates and sanitize. Thanks for your patience. Welcome back. Thanks for your patience. Please welcome in alphabetical order the following candidates for Ward 6. Alan Dunn, Vaughn Gage, Corianne Hartwick. Candidates, I'll draw your attention to my far left to Kenneth Hawes. He's our timekeeper this evening. He will hold up a yellow card to signal 20 seconds remains in your speaking time, and then a red card to indicate when your speaking time is concluded. We'll ask you to finish speaking at that time. The candidates have drawn in advance for a speaking order. They'll come first to the podium for their opening remarks, beginning with Vaughn Gage, please.
I want to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to share the views of Ward 6. As a businesswoman, I feel the Chamber is a valued member of the community. For myself, I grew up in Sherwood Park since 1956. My dad was the first fire chief, my mother was one of the first realtors, and I lived in one of the first 100 houses, and it was a dirt road to Edmonton. Since then, I have seen so many amazing changes. Sherwood Heights was one of the only schools from grade 1 to 9. There was only one major playground just off of Sherwood Heights with a skating rink, and it seemed as though most of the kids had nothing better to do than walk around the neighborhood, raid gardens, and maybe take a little milk money. However, to see how it is now, it's a joy. My children have grown up here, my grandchildren are growing up here, and it is a community that I love dearly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gage. And next we'll hear from Corianne Hartwick.
Good evening. As a parent, I am a firm believer that I need to conduct myself in such a way that when my children think of integrity and fairness, they think of me. I am Corianne Hartwick, and I would be honored to represent the residents of Ward 6 as a councillor. As a lifetime resident of this county, I'm invested in seeing everyone enjoying living here as much as I do. I grew up in Ardrossan. I graduated from Ardrossan High School. I have raised my 4 children here, and I enjoy the local amenities with my grandchildren. My experience in business and communications has given me insight to help work through problems, big or small. Knowing that being able to listen and understand is a critical component to finding the best solution. Being solely responsible for budgets, marketing, goals, and achievement is a skill that has taken many years to understand, and mistakes along the way were quite humbling, to say the least. I have learned to plan with intent and always have the end in mind when making any decision. I have been working on the road tirelessly for 6 weeks, meeting with residents, hearing concerns, asking questions, knowing the only way to meet their expectations is to truly understand them. Being responsive to situations as they present themselves is critical for people to feel that we are listening and doing their job. I am committed to giving a voice to my constituents on all issues that concern them and allow them their input on the major decisions that affect us all. Nobody ever complains about a job well done.
Thank you, Ms. Hartwick. And now I'll invite Mr. Dunn to the podium for his opening remarks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks to the Chamber for organizing this event. As recently as 2014, Strathcona County was rated number 3 in the Maclean's Canada Best Communities list. As of 2021, we have fallen to number 130, and the bottom is nowhere in sight. While this list may not be a gold standard, it shows a worrisome trend. In my view, this collapse is the result of decisions made by Council over the past 10 years. We have lost our way, and it shows. The basis of my platform is fundamental refocus on that which is important to us as residents and taxpayers. Coming back to municipal politics after more than a decade, I am astonished at how little has changed. At the doors, I hear the same complaints about basic services and growth that I heard years ago. More than one voter has told me they no longer bother voting because nobody listens or cares. In Strathcona, residents have become revenue centres rather than people, a source of tax money directed everywhere but toward the benefit of those who pay. I hope to be part of the growing popular movement to correct this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Each of the candidates will now answer a question from their seat that was provided to them in advance by the Chamber of Commerce. What do the residents in Ward 6 feel are the important issues in this election? What do they want from their councillor over the next 4 years? How will you balance the needs of Ward 6 with the needs of all of the residents of Strathcona County in your decision-making? We'll begin with Ms. Hartwick, please.
Thank you. I'm going to answer the 3 questions in order of importance and together, as I believe what the issues are and what they would like from their councillor, they overlap. I would go into this position as a representative of Strathcona County first. All my decisions would be based on the betterment of the community as a whole, and I would hope all councillors would approach the job the same way, bringing no personal agenda to the table. As my ward includes both urban and rural, I would be tasked with helping council to understand the different problems facing both and the complexities of how decisions will affect each area. Throughout the last 6 weeks of being face-to-face with over 4,000 residents, there were many repeating concerns. The people in our ward would like a voice. They want to be heard by their councillor and council as a whole. They want to feel confident that they have a representative that will fight for them and get them answers when they're needed. I heard repeated calls for safety in rural and higher density areas, both for people and property. We need to ensure that our residents feel protected. Heightened patrols, community watch programs, and other means for security need to be addressed. We also need proper signage throughout the county for emergency response to be effective. Residents would like to get back to priority-based budgeting, as it seems we have lost our way on some major projects. No fiscal accountability with decision-making seems to be currently in place. Residents want to see their taxes fairly assessed based on the services that they are receiving. They would like a proper breakdown and analysis provided with their assessment each year. We need to address the needs of our seniors with hubs for connecting both in Sherwood Park but also in rural areas, perhaps in smaller scales in the community. We have a large senior base in rural areas that get overlooked. We need to have some connection in regards to urban to rural bike and walking trails, simple, small solutions to help connect the rural residents safely to the urban systems. And we need to look outside of the urban area to expand our multi-use facilities as a cost-effective alternative to serve the community as a whole. We need to continue to keep all buildings accessible, which has always been our standard. As a parent of 4 athletic kids, I know that if and where you build it, they will come. I understand that these are all pieces of a much larger puzzle, but we need to be accountable to our residents and to our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hartwick. And next we'll hear from Alan Dunn.
What do the residents in your ward feel are the important issues in this election? The important issues are local issues that touch on everyday life in Ward 6. Here's a partial list. Repair and upgrading of shabby, crumbling roads, the expansion of utility services into country residential, a regular police presence in the rural areas, adequately equipped and staffed EMS and fire protection, responsive, vigorous and consistent bylaw enforcement, improved business-county interfaces. Above all, residents wish to see a better return on investment for their taxes with more funds returned to the community rather than spent on ambitious external projects. What do they want from their councillor in the next 4 years? Residents demand a councillor who will be present, listen to them, and champion their views to council and county administration. They want a councillor to have the skills, experience, and training required to navigate the complexities of a modern municipality, together with the persistence need to succeed. Above all, they expect a councillor impervious to the siren call of special interest groups whose influence on council has grown alarmingly over the past few years. How will you balance your ward residents' needs with the needs of all residents of Strathcona County in your decision-making? The needs and desires of Ward 6 align almost perfectly with those of the county as a whole, so there are rarely any substantial conflict. COVID-19, climate change, crippled oil and gas industry, environmental and agricultural degradation, affordable housing, seniors and youth, and a sound, sustainable budget. These issues are county-wide, impacting all wards in one way or another. Where conflict exists, it is driven by the tyranny of the majority. Sherwood Park, with its large population, is viewed as receiving a disproportionate share of services and facilities compared to rural wards. Ward 6 residents are chronically resentful that they receive relatively little for what they pay in taxes compared to the urban service area. My job as councillor is to advocate for the maximum attention and allocation of resources to Ward 6, while recognizing that economies of scale and demographics dictate that certain facilities must be centrally located. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. And now we'll hear from Vaughn Gage.
What do the residents of Ward 6 feel are the important issues for this election? While campaigning over the last few weeks, I've had conversations with numerous residents, most of whom are content with the status quo. That being said, many have raised issues that they feel are important. Some of those issues are as follows: concerns that taxes may increase as a result of decisions being made by council. They expect fiscal responsibility in such a way as to ensure that future development does not lead to increased taxes. Crumbling roads in some divisions are still a concern. Concerns regarding a lack of consultation and engagement with planning and development. Residents are feeling unheard and dismissed by current council as a result of certain projects being passed and others being thrust upon them despite opposition. Residents of Ward 6 expect to have a voice at council. Concerns over policing and security in rural areas is always a concern. The RCMP are to be commended for a decrease in crime by 17%. What do they want from their councillors in the next 4 years? The residents of Ward 6 expect to have their voice at council. They expect a councillor willing to be engaged and have constructive conversations and to take their concerns to council. Seniors and housings are always a concern. They want true and accurate representation and not promises. They expect fiscal responsibility that supports future development and safety at the center of their community while not having a devastating impact on taxes. How will you balance the Ward 6 residents' needs with the needs of all residents of Strathcona County in my decision-making? To quote Aristotle, "The whole is greater than the sum of its parts." I recognize that we are a community and we must come together and function as a whole to be great. Now, that being said, I wouldn't be elected by the residents of Ward 6, and I would represent them and their voice on council. That is their expectation, to be their voice, and that is my commitment. I also understand that not all of the residents will have the same opinion on all issues. We live in a democratic society, and therefore the majority rules. In conclusion, I offer a mature and consistent service to Ward 6. It would be an honor to be their voice.
Thank you, Ms. Gage. And next, we'll hear from each of the candidates at the podium for their closing remarks for 2 minutes each, beginning with Ms. Gage, please.
My closing remarks will be made without notes because it has to be offered from the heart. The one thing that I can say is, having lived here for 65 years, is I have seen things grow, and I have seen opportunities continue to be offered to our youth in employment because of the huge business community we now have. I can remember when I started my first business in 1971, a lone little salon started in Edmonton, and soon to come to Sherwood Park, and 5 other salons along the way, along with a restaurant and bar in Sherwood Park and a clothing store. So I have seen businesses come and go, and for the most part, I know that the most important thing that the Chamber has been doing is shop Sherwood Park, shop local. And that is so important. It's all fine to have many of the chains, but the people that put their money, invest their lives and their times in this community are of utmost importance. I have also seen that in the rural area, there are businesses as well, and they offer construction, so many other things. And I would like to be able to pull the two together, be a voice for all of the county, as well as my ward, and that comes from listening and caring and maturity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gage. And next, for his closing remarks, we'll hear from Alan Dunn.
Since I don't have a heart, I'll read my notes. There is no magic to obtaining the best possible outcome for Ward 6. It requires knowledge, negotiating skills, and a sound understanding of council dynamics. Council exists for one reason only, and that is to provide for the welfare and safety of county residents. By being distracted by impressive but unrealistic mega projects, Council has failed to do its job. This costly failure has become increasingly obvious over the past decade. The purpose of my return to municipal politics is to be part of a new council whose goal it is to put Strathcona County back on course. I believe I have the experience, expertise, energy, and ethics necessary to make a meaningful contribution to this enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. And next, we'll hear from Corianne Hartwick.
I would like to personally thank everyone for planning this event tonight, to my fellow candidates for sharing this platform, and to everyone for watching. Thank you. I could not have done this without the support of my family, friends, mentors, and complete strangers who stepped up because they believed in me. I have had an opportunity to connect with so many people. It has given me faith in the democratic system. As a public representative, people trust you to give them your best every day, and that is my purest intention. I look forward to the opportunity to work with Council and other elected members for the betterment of Strathcona County, to represent everyone from the young to the young at heart. On October 18th, I hope that I have given you confidence in my ability to represent you in Ward 6 as your elected official. My name is Corianne Hartwick, and it has been my absolute pleasure tonight to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hartwick. I think once again I'll echo what I said with respect to Ward 5, that the residents of Ward 6 will have a difficult choice ahead of them, that it's great that you could come out tonight and participate with us, although it has to be virtual, and I'm sure we would rather to have been able to meet in person. But it's so nice to see people engaged. It's nice to see people engaged in a positive way. It's very nice to see people who are so committed as residents of Ward 6 to the democratic process and to their community and to the residents in general, and making sure that things move forward. Of course, I'm sure we're all aware of Mr. Dunn's remarks about Strathcona County and whether it's fallen in the standings and whether it needs to do something to turn itself around. That's been a theme we've heard last night and tonight, and it's just overwhelmingly positive how many people that are willing to step up, volunteer, commit, stand for election. So thank you so much for your participation. We'll take a 5-minute break now and thank everyone who's watching for their patience while we sanitize and wait for our next round of candidates. Thank you. Welcome back. Thanks for your patience. I'd like to invite the candidates of Ward 7, welcoming them first in alphabetical order, the following candidates: Dylan Bulhacek, Harvey Grabel, and Glenn Lawrence. Candidates, I'll draw your attention to my left to Kenneth Hawes, who's our timekeeper this evening. He will hold up a yellow card to signal that 20 seconds remain in your speaking time, and then a red card to indicate when your speaking time is concluded. And we'll ask you to please finish speaking when you see the red card. The candidates have drawn for speaking order in advance, and I will invite them to the podium for their opening remarks, beginning with Glenn Lawrence, please.
For tuning in tonight for this live web version. I want to thank the Chamber also for putting this on. It's such an awkward time right now to try to get out and see everyone, so this is a very good move. The past 4 years on council has been a bit of a rough ride. We started out with a fairly new council, a lot of new members, and then we were rocked by an explosion that really set our staff back. And then, of course, COVID-19 that came in. These things were tough on our staff and tough on our community. And, but we persevered through, and we moved forward with the business at hand for Strathcona County. One of the things I wanted to talk about very quickly was the tax decrease that we had done. We kept our taxes below zero for 4 years. Seniors Advisory Committee, rural crimes down 11%, $12 million increase in rural roads, and one of my favorites, the water fill station at South Cooking Lake, and whistle cessation on the CN main line along our boundaries between Ward 7 and Ward 5. So these are some of the things I'm very proud of that we've got done in the first 4 years, and we'll talk about some more in the next part of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. I'm sorry if I was unclear. It's entirely up to the candidates whether they want to use the podium or not for their opening remarks. We'll hear next from Dylan Bulhacek, please.
Growing up in the Cooking Lake area, I have had the chance to meet many of our local community members, whether it's been through minor hockey, friends and family, community groups, the online Ward 7 communicates, or through the unlikeliest of circumstances. My name is Dylan Bulhacek. I am a lifelong resident of Strathcona County and Ward 7. Being raised here, I've attended rural schools, participated in local community matters, joined community organizations, and worked my way to a degree in environmental science from the University of Alberta, among many other achievements. Let me be the catalyst for change in this ward. A vast improvement in the direction of municipal government by a program of direct resident involvement, allowing residents to take a hand in molding their future for the better. To achieve greater success united, rather than leaving our once great ward to wither away like in these decades past. If elected, I want to dramatically increase the resident participation in Ward 7 and municipal governance. A reoccurring forum in Ward 7 to address concerns and decide the direction we should take, community decisions based on online voting, and the knowledge that no matter what your vision is, we can explore it as a community united. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bulhacek. And next we'll hear from Mr. Grabel, please.
Hi, my name is Harvey Grabel, and I'm running for the candidate for Ward 7 Council. A little bit of my background: I've been in Lincoln Green, the County of Strathcona, for 43 years. I'm happily married to a wonderful woman, Kathy, and I have 4 wonderful children. They all live in the County of Strathcona. My years in the county, I've been a hockey coach. I joined the minor league hockey, Strathcona Olympic Center. I was not only a coach, but I was a manager there for years. I also worked at EPCOR for 39 years as an environmental manager until I retired. I completed my environment management diploma at the University of Alberta. I farmed for 35 years in the county of Strathcona. All my kids live in the county, and ongoing communications, I've learned the growing concerns and challenges for our seniors regarding living longer in their own homes. Residents in the ward are concerned about address of higher cost living and skyrocketing prices. I also support and mentor young adults who are willing to come into the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graybill. I apologize for mispronouncing your name earlier. The candidates will now have 3 minutes each from their seats to respond to the following question that was given to them by the Chamber in advance. What do the residents of Ward 7 feel are the important issues in this election? What do they want from their councillor in the next 4 years? How will you balance the needs of Ward 7 residents with the needs of all other residents of Strathcona County in your decision making? We'll hear first from Mr. Bulhacek.
The people of Strathcona County's Ward 7 are tenacious and passionate about their home community. Ours is a diverse locality that has seen an impressive recreational past, flown the clear blue skies, weathered the decline of our abundant lakes, built homes and families that last generations, and continuously band together as friends and neighbors to support each other in this time of COVID. The next 4 years need to be an era of great change, a break with the now tradition of anti-transparency, lack of public involvement, and with the assumption we cannot meaningfully improve the hand our ward has been dealt. My motto is action for your vision. It is my vision to ensure the residents of this ward have the ability to meaningfully enact change, to not be at the mercy of a councillor's preferences or personal agenda, to show that there is wide support here for a change in the way things are. Let's decide our direction as a community. I want to ensure there is prompt and thorough transparency, with information readily available to residents with a simple click of a mouse. It is long overdue that we can go online and see exactly what's going on, the process of a Ward 7 initiative, or sound, rational reasoning for any decisions made. Municipal governance should not be a mystery box known only to your elected official. There'll be emphasis on rural community support, infrastructure, boundless economic revival, recreational growth, and affordability solutions as directed by Ward 7 residents. A strong Ward 7 showing makes for a stronger Strathcona County. There are tried and true methods that should be fought for on municipal council for resident-mandated reform. Municipal oversight boards made up of ordinary residents, fiscal prudence, attention to ethics, and rational decisions based on resident need. This is not an easy path forward, but the best things are never easy. I am confident that Strathcona County can achieve heights not seen since the days of Cooking's high waters. Another term of complacency will only get us more of the last 2 decades. Another term of rural versus urban division, imposed decline and demolitions like Manistic, anger at abysmal public consultation, and believing that the best you can hope for is maybe your Range Road getting fixed next year.
Thank you, Mr. Bulhacek. And now we'll hear from Glenn Lawrence, please.
Thank you. So I broke this down into sort of a 3-part question. Of course, important issues at the door, what we've been hearing. Of course, the number 1 issue we've been hearing is COVID, but I'm not going to talk about that tonight. Responsible use of tax dollars, we get that. People want to know that we're representing their dollars wisely on council and putting them to the best uses. Rural roads, always an issue. You continually build them up and they break down. We have a lot of traffic, a lot of infrastructure that wasn't designed for the traffic that we have today. So we're continually adding money and moving forward on that. Safe and healthy community, police, fire, EMS, we're hearing that. People are concerned about that, and we're always improving on those. Improving rural cell and internet, we've been hearing that too at the door. The county's working on a 3-year program right now to advance and work with other invested opportunities to make that better. Rural recreation, starting to hear more and more of that. People are wanting to do things, and I think COVID's been part of that. People are at home. They want to take advantage of a lot of our municipal reserves and our parks and enhancing those. What do they want in the next 4 years? Well, they want leadership, and they want someone to listen to their needs. And that sort of breaks down into two things. There's day-to-day needs, and those are the calls that you take almost on a daily basis, just basically the things that affect people in their community. And you get on those, you deal with them, and you move on. Then there's the big picture ones that council has to deal with. The future of the county, where we're going, are we keeping everything working fine? All the responsibilities that we have as a municipality. And of course, again, fiscal responsibility. We hear that constantly. People say, what are we getting for our taxes? Again, I have to say, I think we've done a very good job on taxes over the last 4 years. We've kept them, as I say, below zero. We've increased services, and I think our fiscal management has been great. Question, balance resident needs to county needs. We take an oath to the county, but we do represent our ward. And we're a specialized municipality, so it's an urban-rural. It's always tough to try to balance that out. As a rural, we tend to be a little bit less in population, so we have to work a little bit harder with that. And of course, it's the ability to work with your mayor and council to get those programs through that you want, that the issues and what the people have asked you to do. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. And next we'll hear from Harvey Graybill.
Yes, I'd also like to break this down into 3 different questions. First of all, what do the residents want? What do they feel that they want? Better road maintenance. They want better uses of reserved land in subdivisions. Also, they want to help seniors to live longer in their own homes. They want access for senior public transportation in rural counties. Also, the budget review. They want to look at where the real dollars are being spent in the Ward 7. They want to review the procedures and policies for subdividing lands in the county of Strathcona. And that would be the first question. The second one is, again, what they want to see in the next 4 years from the councillor and myself. Road maintenance needs to be priority for safety. Some of the roads have such potholes that it's unsafe to even drive on. Also, I plan to generate a budget, keep taxes to the lowest. I want to make sure an upcoming budget more transparent to the residents in Ward 7. They want to really see what the budget is. I want to make sure that it is more affordable for seniors and other residents to stay in their own homes. They can stay with their kids, less cost. I want to support the building a full activity complex for seniors. I think this was discussed at council last year. I hope it goes through. I'll support it. I'll make myself available to attend all community meetings and events as they arise in the future. I feel it is very important to support local companies and businesses in Ward 7. We also have to give opportunities to attract young people into the county. On the last question. First and foremost, I'll always put needs of the residents of Ward 7 over the needs of other wards. Our Ward 7 residents have a strong voice. I would like to take a close look at which upcoming projects needs attention, and how these issues direct impact Ward 7. I've always been a team player, and I will be working closely with other councillors in Strathcona to come up with solutions to the problems that we'll face in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graybill. Each of the candidates will now have 2 minutes at the podium for their closing remarks this evening. We'll begin with Harvey Graybill, please.
I'd like to thank all the 3,200 residents that have knocked on doors, that communicated with me and told me what their issues were. I will commit to all their concerns. If I'm elected as councillor, I will go back and talk to these people and get them involved in decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graybill. And now we'll hear from Dylan Bulhacek.
As you heard here today, you have a choice to make: to blindly follow where Ward 7 and Strathcona County seem to be rapidly heading, or to change course for the better. Ward 7 itself used to be the undisputed recreational center of the capital region, an economic and natural powerhouse boasting tens of thousands of paying visitors annually. Indeed, Ward 7 is a peaceful and pleasant place to live, but we could be so much more. Improve what we love about our home, build new legacies for our children while tending to our elders' heritage. The past decades have been a slow decline compared to what we could strive to be. Currently, even the simplest convenience or service requires years and years of lobbying or outright outrage. And to elect the same or similar will yield just that again. I am a firm believer in working united with the residents of our county for the greatest possible outcome, where widespread public involvement means working together and your opinion matters. To strive for a legacy worthy of our distant past. This is action for your vision, and for the next 4 years, it's finally time to unleash it. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity to speak, and the residents of Strathcona County for watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bulhacek. And now we'll hear from Glenn Lawrence with his closing remarks.
I thank you again for hosting this, and thank you again for the residents out there that are listening in. Hopefully this will be of value. I just want to pick up on some of the other things I had said about continued fiscal management. I believe that the last 4 years that Mayor and Council have done a very good job on the fiscal management of Strathcona County. We have great reserves, we have a great tax base, and we have some of the best services by far in the province and probably in the country. I just want to pick up on a few things that I'd like to do within the next term if I was re-elected, and that is to, again, the continued fiscal management, pull together on current and future needs for seniors. We've put together a seniors advisory committee, and it's moving along, and it's coming up with a lot of good information for us to work on. Improving high-speed rural internet and cellular service is something that we're working on, and we're moving forward. We've put probably close to $15 million into that program. Continued and improved rural road policy, that's ongoing. Always the roads is the issue. Manage and control future growth, rural water extension, capital region cooperation, rural recreation, and South Cooking Lake 100th anniversary coming up that we're looking forward to doing a lot of work down in South Cooking Lake. So these are some of the things that I'd like to get started on again in the next term if you allow me to be re-elected. If you have any more questions you need or any answers, please come to my webpage and you can see the things there, and you can also call me. And again, thank you for the past 4 years, and I hope you give me another 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. I'd like to thank each of the candidates that's running for Ward 7 for their attendance tonight, for putting their names forward, for participating in the democratic process, for being willing to attend a virtual forum. I appreciate that all of us would rather be doing this in person. It's very difficult to connect with people in a virtual way, but we're doing our best. I think the people who are watching, they have a difficult choice ahead of them, and I encourage everyone to go out and vote and make your voices heard. Thank you very much for coming, gentlemen. We'll take a 5-minute break while we get ready for our mayoralty candidates. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for your patience. The mayoralty candidates part of the forum is broken down into 4 sections. The first is a 90-second introduction and opening statements. The second is 90 seconds per question. They'll start with answering a question from the Chamber of Commerce, followed by a question and answer period, and 3 minutes closing remarks from each of our candidates. Please welcome our candidates this evening in alphabetical order, starting with Al Beal. Oh, sorry, Mr. Beal, I don't mean to interrupt you. Just let me finish the introductions, then I'll absolutely turn over to you. I want to make sure we have time to move the camera to everybody because we're doing it virtually, so I did give a big pause there, but we'll just do our introductions first. And David Dixon. Rod Frank. Annie McKittrick. And Dave Quest. We'll now begin with our opening statements from the candidates. The candidates have drawn for speaking order. Please show your respect for each candidate by not interrupting them during their speaking time. Candidates, I'll draw your attention to my far left to Kenneth Hawes, who's our timekeeper this evening. He will hold up a yellow card when there are 20 seconds remaining in your speaking time and a red card when your speaking time is concluded. We'll ask you to please spot the red card and finish speaking when you see the red card. I'll welcome first to the podium for his opening remarks, Rod Frank.
Thank you, Terry Lynn, and good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Chamber for organizing this forum and to everyone watching from home. My name is Rod Frank, and I've been honored to be your mayor for the past 4 years. I moved here with my family in 1963. The population of the county at that time was under 10,000 people. As the county grew, I grew with it. I became a lawyer, and I raised my 2 sons here with my spouse. We've had tremendous success in our community over the last 60 years, and today our population is just under 100,000. During my last term as mayor, I have provided disciplined, calm leadership through the worst pandemic in 100 years, through a crisis at County Hall, and through one of the worst recessions in the history of the province. I have led our community safely through COVID-19. Going forward, my priorities include opening our economy for business, offering best-in-class municipal services, and building a diverse, inclusive community. Fiscally, I keep a close eye on both sides of the ledger. I am not a tax and spend politician. Before my term started, taxes were projected to be increasing by 11.34%. But under my leadership, we've decreased taxes by 1.35%. And at the same time, services have increased. Thank you. I look forward to your questions and also making closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And now we'll hear from Dave Quest with his opening remarks.
Good evening. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting this event and the other candidates for participating. My name is Dave Quest. I've lived in the county for 41 years. Went to school at Ardrossan. Spent most of my adult life in the private sector. We were car dealerships years ago. We're food franchises today. I have the political experience with my 2 terms in the Alberta legislature. And I have the community experience to be the best choice for mayor of Strathcona County. I'll provide strong leadership. Strong leadership's about being proactive versus reactive. It's about making hard decisions without playing both sides of the situation. It means I will actually act in the best interests of the community. Being a strong leader also means I won't tell you that I can reverse land decisions that I can't. I won't promise you to override provincial decisions on vaccine passports when I know no mayor in Alberta can possibly do that. I'll look for ways to provide the best value for taxpayers. I'll help council set priorities and allocate the budget according to that which is most important. I will advocate to stop spending money on reports that have already been done and start implementing the recommendations on those reports. I won't forget my role to represent the residents, which is why I've knocked on more than 11,000 doors with our team. I can't represent you if I haven't listened to you. I will work with every member of council to create a cohesive team. I will represent all residents, urban and rural. Look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And now I'll invite Annie McKittrick to the podium for her opening remarks.
Good evening. My name is Annie McKittrick, and I'm your collaborative, creative, and innovative choice for Mayor of Strathcona County. My experience has shown me that bringing a range of voices to the table allows for sound decision-making where residents know they have a stake and representation in how their communities are run. And like others seeking the mayoral chair, I am not making promises that I won't be able to keep. I can't promise to give free transit to youth or seniors, or cut property tax, or stop projects that have already passed the approval stage. As I know that the mayor is only one vote on council and that good decisions are made only after consideration of all the information. A good leader understands that working with others collaboratively achieves success, and it's the only way to move forward. As the mayor, I will celebrate the positive results in our municipality by highlighting the contributions of all 9 elected officials and county staff who work together to craft and implement council decisions. I promise to foster an environment of cooperation and collaboration on council. Thank you. On October 18, vote for an experienced leader. Elect Annie McKittrick for Mayor of Strathcona County.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. And now I'll invite Al Beal to the podium for his opening remarks, please.
My name is Al Beal. Thank you, Terry Lynn and the Sherwood Park and District Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity. I stand for the principles of medical autonomy, informed consent, and freedom of choice. Many of our current businesses in Strathcona are hurting, not from COVID, but from the unscientific, fear-based, politically driven government mandates. Our government should be using compliance and control, but should be using real science-based solutions. The last 19 months have proven that these heavy-handed methods have not worked. They have not only hurt the people, they have hurt the people and our businesses and have not succeeded in getting this COVID under control. We need leaders in government that understand business and science, are willing to make practical and common sense decisions. We need a change in government. Unfortunately, we are unable to do that at the federal level, but we can change it at the local level. So I have the technical and business experience to lead this county forward and move it forward. I've dealt with every municipality in Western Canada at one time in my career, and I know what it takes to bring a municipality to its top level. And I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. And now we'll hear from David Dixon with his opening remarks.
I'd like to say thank you to the Sherwood Park and District Chamber of Commerce for holding us. It's unfortunate that this year we have to actually hold a virtual conference. 4 years ago we had a much more intimate in-person debate, live questions, a little bit of buzz, and it's unfortunate. As I said, I've just met somebody in the back room and I was talking about that, and they said, well, the fact is we can reach a larger audience through the media as opposed to the in-person. I apologize for missing the first 2 debates. I wasn't feeling well, and I didn't want to actually expose anybody that I would have come in contact with during those debates. Apologies, but going forward, I will participate. 4 years ago, we actually had a very, very similar debate. Bremner was the #1 pellet and #1 plank. We promised that we would actually get rid of it. Fast forward 4 years later, Bremner is actually a commitment now. The same with the agricultural facility. It's a good thing that we've actually chosen to put it on pause until a more economic, positive environment comes to us. 4 years ago, I said 3 things: transportation, trash, and transit. That's the civic domain. That's what we have to look forward to. That's what we have to get better at delivering. Honesty, electoral spending. I don't have a lot of signs up this year. I'm not funded by developers, funded by myself and my family. In the next 2 weeks, I look forward to debate, and thank you for participating in tonight's event.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. The next portion of tonight's event is a question and answer period where the candidates will have the opportunity, while seated, to answer a series of questions, some of which are coming through on Zoom. Anyone can submit a question on Zoom as long as it's respectful and up to 40 words in length. The first question this evening is one from the chamber for each of the candidates, who will again address in the order that they drew for earlier. And the question from the chamber is, the COVID-19 pandemic is now in its 19th month and the 4th wave. It has seriously affected the business community. Some businesses have closed down for good. Others are barely hanging on. What is your plan for economic recovery in Strathcona County? How will you handle business relief? How will you work to attract new businesses for Strathcona County? And we'll begin with Al Beal.
Thank you. I've worked in every municipality in Western Canada, and I have a really good idea in my work that what it takes to lead a municipality into helping their businesses. We have a lot of businesses that want to move to Sherwood Park and Strathcona County, but it's our red tape and bureaucracy that's preventing them from coming here. We should be working with different businesses and coming up with ideas so that we can develop policies and bylaws that will help these businesses relocate or start up here in Strathcona County. It takes too long for a business to get a development permit or any type of permit. We do a good job on residential permits, but on the rest of the permits, we fail miserably. For example, it takes me, I applied for a permit 2 weeks ago for my election sign permit, and I still do not have it. Something that simple shouldn't take that long. We need our administration to be more flexible and in its interpretation of our rules so that our businesses don't have to be tied down and bogged down with minute details that are tying them down. It's our provincial mandates that are causing our business to hurt, and we got to lobby against our province and our federal government to lift these mandates that are hurting our businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beal. And next we'll hear from David Dixon. At your seat, please, sir.
A very good question. If we've every Friday, actually, the Sherwood Park News has actually given 4 questions for each of us to answer, and they publish our answers every Friday. The last one was actually a little bit of COVID related, a little bit of business development related, a little bit of all of the above related. The fact is, COVID is with us now. COVID will be with us for the rest of our lives, the next generations. We can't out-science it. We can't outrun it. We have to live with it. It's not the mandate of local politicians to deal in medical science. We have to respect the medical professionals. As I said again, the mandate of local government is transportation and transit, and by giving a good infrastructure facility, a good backbone to the community, it's very interesting looking at the last 2 years of the council's notes and meetings. Those 3 have been addressed in different venues. The county roads have to be looked after, the county infrastructure has to be looked after, the county trash has to be looked after, but most importantly, we have to actually promote regional integrity to overcome the obstacles that COVID have given us. It really is that simple. Return to the roots of what we're good at, provide them, but it's not our mandate to look after medical issues.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And next we'll hear from Dave Quest.
All right, thank you, Terry Lynn. I think as the candidate in the room that has owned several businesses and still owns several businesses, I've personally lived through this situation with COVID, and it requires action, just not talk. So the first thing I think we can do as a county is we can lower the franchise fees on utilities for small businesses that have been receiving emergency relief from the federal government, so the ones that are actually in trouble. Same businesses, property tax abatement or deferral in the short term. If the business owner owns the building, then that deferral or abatement goes to them. If they're a tenant, then it goes to the landlord, but the landlord has to pass it on to the tenant to reduce the common area costs. But going back to some of the regulation that's been mentioned, what we need is a small business ambassador that works for the county that acts as a go-between between the business and the county and permitting administration. Sometimes it's just communication, but what this person would do is they would act on behalf of the small business owner. I had an experience myself with a store that we just built, and it was with respect to a huge exhaust fan system that was required. We needed nothing like that. I wasn't having any luck with the permitting people, but this business ambassador did a fabulous job helping us navigate the permit and bureaucracy, and it ended up having a happy ending. We need one of those in the county of Strathcona. It would make things go a lot easier for the small business person and administration.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And now we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
Thank you for the question. All three orders of government have a role and responsibility to support the economic recovery and provide support for businesses. In Strathcona County, we have no business license, a low mill rate, and an active economic development and tourism department who courts new businesses and investments. Some retail or service-oriented businesses may need to pivot to attract new customers or deliver their services in new ways post-pandemic. There is a role for the Municipal Economic Development and Tourism Department and the Chamber of Commerce to provide support and training opportunities for these businesses that are forced to pivot. The Chamber already has an amazing Shop Local campaign, and as Mayor, I would support this initiative by working with Council to explore a procurement process that supports the Buying Local campaign. While the county cannot force consumers to buy locally and not through Amazon, it can provide leadership by modeling buying locally. Businesses are attracted to communities with easy access to markets, predictable regulations, and opportunities for their employees to live, play, and find community. While we do have a diversity of housing, we need to expand our affordable housing options. Continued investment in our industrial areas and the support industries, such as steel manufacturers, is important to economic recovery.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. And now we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Thank you. Our businesses have been hit with a triple whammy: recession, depressed energy markets, and of course the pandemic. A recent Leger poll showed that economic growth, lowering taxes, and attracting new business are the biggest concerns, and I'm acting on all of these. Our economic base is strong. This sets us up for more success. We have offered tax and utility deferrals, and this remains an option going forward. We have a competitive tax structure. We have reallocated over $42 million from low to high priority programs without asking business for a single dime. This reallocation process will continue. I have actioned with Council the COVID-19 Economic Resilience Task Force. Going forward, we are investing $35 million for improved broadband access, including $17 million in commercial areas. We are attracting investments in hydrogen, a fuel of the future, and in petrochemical opportunities. I will continue to advocate and build relationships to advance the interests of our business community. In part because of our advocacy, the province has instituted an incentive policy for industrial development, and we will be the first to test a provincial program for reduced red tape. Under my leadership, our business-friendly approach is supporting business through COVID-19 and spurring economic activity.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. I'll just remind people that are watching on Zoom that you're welcome to submit questions. They can be up to 40 words in length, and as long as they're respectful, we'll do our best to address everybody's questions this evening. Our first question of the evening, and to start out, why don't we go with alphabetical order? The first question is, the federal government has announced plans to empower municipalities with the option to create gun controls. If passed, the federal legislation would allow municipal governments the authority to create bylaws changing current policies around the possession, storage, and transportation of guns in their communities, with penalties including jail time. If you are elected, would you seek to introduce gun control bylaws in Strathcona County? And we'll hear first from Mr. Beale.
I believe that our current gun control laws are appropriate for our community, and I don't think we have to add any additional bylaws or anything that would require any additional work. I think they're adequate, and most of our citizens in Strathcona County are law-abiding citizens and manage their guns properly, and we do not have an issue, so I would not change any of our laws that we have currently in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. And we'll hear from Mr. Dixon.
Interesting question. The fact of the matter is guns don't kill people, people kill people. Whether a gun is used as an instrument of violence or a knife or an uttered threat or bare hands, the fact of the matter is we do have and we will always have an element of society that is not manageable by current laws and bylaws. So it's not a matter of gun control, it's actually a matter of giving additional psychiatric or help to the people that experience the urge or the need to resort to an alternate form of, basically, it's dispute resolution. We've had some tragic occurrences in the county itself that I feel if the people that inflicted the violence on other people, and whether it's a gun or a knife, as I said, or bare hands, if we offer additional counseling to the people, opioid, I feel that it's not a gun control issue. I feel it's actually access to better mental health, which I think we can do. It's a very, very simple solution. So the gun regulations do not have to be changed.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Well, thank you, Terry Lynn. First of all, there's hunters and responsible people in our county, rurally and urbanly, that have guns, and I have no interest at all in stepping into that at all. They're responsible gun owners. Secondly, this is a very bizarre situation where the federal government is now downloading to municipalities an area of federal jurisdiction and possibly provincial jurisdiction. What does that mean? It means the lawyers are going to get rich because there's going to be a fight in the courts who actually has the right to legislate in this area. But it's sort of odd. We're seeing this provincially where the government's downloading to municipalities to make decisions on COVID, and now federally, they want us to look after guns. So I guess it's a comment on how skilled municipal politicians are. But more seriously, this really should not be an issue that's dealt with municipality by municipality. It should be, at a minimum, a regional approach, a provincial approach, and quite rightly, a national approach to this issue. So I'm not going to wade in here other than to say, at a minimum, we'd have to work in the region to come up with some standard law. Thank you.
Mr. Frank, you say keeping lawyers busy like it's a bad thing. I think you were a lawyer for a long time, weren't you? Thank you, Mr. Frank, and we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
Thank you. It is an interesting question, especially when you don't precise what kind of guns you meet. And I would echo the comments around hunting. I think any decisions that we make as a municipality must be based on full information and the reason and firm reason as to why we would pass such a law. So if this ever came to council table or in a discussion with staff, I would want to make sure, first of all, make sure of the jurisdiction from the federal government, the provincial government. I would want to talk to the RCMP and the other law enforcement officers. I would want to look at the stats to see if it's an issue in our community, the number of possible handguns that people have in our community and what incidents have happened. And then I would widely consult with the people that are the most affected by potential decisions. But I would like to echo the comments that it's kind of interesting that the federal government is leaving this to municipalities on a municipality by municipality basis, and we would definitely have to work not only regionally, but I think we would have to work across the province on this issue.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick, and now we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Well, I would interpret the question not to mean that the federal government is giving up any control of gun control, but the municipalities, so that would be the baseline. So the municipalities would be, I guess, have the option to do anything over and above, and I just don't see where that would be necessary. I mean, you know, we do have a bit of a crime problem in the county of Strathcona. We did have a drive-by shooting just a few weeks ago, but I don't imagine the perpetrators would have turned their guns in at the county boundary. So, no, I can't see any. I can't see any situation where the county of Strathcona would need to wade into that. The federal law would supersede, and that would be quite sufficient in my opinion.
I think you're talking about paramountcy, sir. You're starting to sound like a lawyer too, Mr. Quest.
Well, I was a lawmaker for a while, yeah.
The next question deals with a social issue in the county that I think spreads well beyond the county. We had a devastating fire that affected 6 businesses in Strathcona County in 2021, and the reports were that it was started by somebody who was homeless, which is obviously a serious issue for the county, both affordable housing and homelessness. If you are elected, what will you do to address homelessness in Strathcona County? We'll begin with Mr. Dixon, move towards Mr. Frank, and come back around to Mr. Beal. Mr. Dixon, please.
Actually, an interesting question. I mean, I ride my bicycle behind that facility virtually every second day when I do my bike ride. And that's one of the reasons I know the condition of the county roads. The fact is, arson is a random act. We do have a situation. We don't have the homeless that the city of Edmonton experiences, but we do have a number of homeless people living around. It's interesting. We don't see them a lot, but they are in our town, and they are actually not necessarily welcome, but they are part of society, whether they choose to be homeless by economic reasons or, as I said on the first question, by mental health issues, which the fact of the matter is a lot of people choose to be homeless because they do have problems with authority. It's a tragic situation. It goes back to the first one I just said. We need to offer all elements of society access to better psychiatric assessments, homeless shelters, which we don't really have a lot of in the county. An interesting fact is I was looking at the website, and the current mayor said, I will work with the developers on the homeless situation. And I was always thinking that we should never say I, we should always say we, because when elected, I'm one of 9, not one of 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And next we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is a very serious problem. It's not what will I do, it's what I've been doing, what I think we have to continue to do. And solving homelessness and affordable housing is something we tackle through various means. One of them, of course, is Heartland Housing. We're one of the co-members of Heartland Housing that offers affordable units. It's also something that nonprofits, that we can support them in, and we do have a healthy budget to support nonprofits with their operating revenues. And thirdly, there's a role for private industry also here. So we have to continue on that road. We also have a very strong family and community services in Strathcona County. It is far stronger than other municipalities of our size. It's well funded. Homelessness is something that they deal with regularly. I'm in contact with them whenever these problems arise, and we do act on it, and we do get out to those individuals and offer solutions. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
Well, I'm glad this question was asked because we often ignore here some of the social problems in our community. So I actually looked at homelessness in Strathcona County when I worked for the county and realized that it was something that we needed to really take care of. There's only one affordable housing subsidized place for adults in the county run by Heartland Housing, so we have very few affordable housing places for anyone that's on AISH or on government assistance. I would love to see a not-for-profit society started in the county with the aim of creating possibly a shelter or what we often call a place where people can stay during the day to when they're kicked out of the shelters at night, and that we really need to develop more affordable housing, subsidized housing, or possibly some supportive housing for people who have mental health or addiction problems. I don't think the private sector is going to be able to help us with this. I think as a community, we have to make it a priority to build a shelter. Our transition house also needs to, our shelter also needs to have a new place. So let's all work together to make it happen.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. And now we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Okay, well, I think step one for us as a county is to admit there is a problem. I feel like in our leadership, you know, we're all rich and we have great big houses and our kids are star athletes and we're all very well educated. And that's not the case for so many residents in Strathcona County. So let's actually admit there's a problem and start addressing it. With respect to, you know, what we're seeing sometimes with panhandling on the street, I don't see a lot of intervention, and I'm not quite sure, you know, what happens after that. But really, there needs to be some intervention. There needs to be support. Those people need to be helped out by family and community services, and then there needs to be a seamless turnover to provincial social services and so on, if that's appropriate. But for example, addictions and homelessness, of course, somewhat related. We have 5 addictions beds in this entire county for 100,000 people. That is nowhere near close enough to what we need. So there's a great deal of work to be done there with respect to the underprivileged and the homeless. But step one is admitting that we have a problem, and we do.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And now we'll hear from Al Beal.
Good question. I'm associated with an organization called Hope Mission, and of all the organizations I've met and dealt with over the years, Hope Mission seems to have the best and most successful program for getting people off the street and back into the workforce. So I would encourage people to meet with Hope Mission and work with our community here and develop a program here in Strathcona County as to how we can go from homelessness to back and getting people back into the workforce. They have a very successful program, and working with a successful program is the key to moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. The next question deals with finance in the budget. For each of them, what is their plan to pay back the use of reserve funds in the past 2 years? So I'm taking it the tax rate, the increase or decrease as it was done at the expense of using some reserve funds, and people would like to know what your plan is to pay that back. We will start with Rod Frank, move to my right, and come back around to Mr. Beal. Mr. Frank, please.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, I keep a really close eye on the finances. I don't tax and spend, and the key to that is going to be reprioritization. So we don't have to go back and ask people to pay more money. We rank every service that we have in this county. There's over 300 of them. We rank them from highest priority to lowest priority. And just by shifting our emphasis from the higher priority service to the higher priority services, we can create revenues. The truth, though, is that our reserves really aren't in jeopardy. We have a very healthy reserve balance compared to our peers. And the provincial government does keep an eye on that. You don't want to have too high of reserves either. For example, what the provincial government looks at as a healthy reserve balance might be if you have a capital asset worth $10 million and you're banking $1 million a year in reserves to replace that over 10 years, that's healthy. But if you're banking $2 million and you're creating an extra reserve of, say, $20 million for a $10 million asset, that makes your reserves at risk. So I think reprioritization is the key to solving the problem, but our finances are extremely healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And next we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
I think as a community, we are going to have to enter into altogether into a conversation of what we need, what we want in our community. There is an increasing number of downloading from the provincial government. There are some planned cutbacks to MSI and some of the other grants that the government is doing, and we also have to spend money to recover from the pandemic. So what I would like to see is a community conversation on what can we afford, what could we afford possibly, and what we cannot afford now. And I think it's the only way for us to start rebuilding our reserves, to not increase our taxes, is to work with the community so they have a say in what we will be doing with the property tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. And we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Oh, thank you, and that's a good question, because I think a number of us don't really know what happened with the reserve funds. But one thing's for sure, the 0% tax increase was not due to any special fiscal management. They just took the money out of reserves. And you're right, I kind of wonder how we're going to pay it back too. There's been mention that we use priority-based budgeting. We do not use priority-based budgeting. I've sat many hours with the fellow that teaches municipalities about priority-based budgeting, and that's not what we're doing. If we were doing it, we wouldn't have allocated tens of millions of dollars more suddenly to a multi-purpose ag facility. Not that I'm against it conceptually, but at 70 million, it doesn't make sense. And, you know, at the same time, now that that suddenly came out of nowhere, that was a surprise to many of us. You know, we haven't done anything with rural internet. We don't have a seniors activity center. Energy retrofit program, nothing's happened. We've talked about it, but nothing's happened. All those things need to take priority over $40 million for an ag facility, over and above what it was supposed to be. So we don't use priority-based budgeting. I don't see where we, again, made any sound fiscal decisions in the last budget. But I do know that we played a shell game. We had a 0% tax increase, but we didn't because we just used the taxpayers' money that was in the reserves.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And now we'll hear from Al Beal.
Good question. What we need to do in our county is spend our money more wisely. We are a very wealthy county and we have a big budget, but we squander our money. We're not very effective with the money that we have. And so we have to hold our administration accountable in how they're spending the money and how they can use their funds more effectively. And by saving money, by proper spending and proper handling of our finances, we can save the money and build up our reserve fund again. It's just a matter of financial responsibility like we would in a corporation. So that's I'd encourage us as a council to get our administration to sharpen their pencils and to do things more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. And we'll hear from David Dixon.
Again, as everybody said, a very good question. This year's budget was $377.1 million, which works out to about $1 million a day. The multi-use equestrian / agricultural facility is $71.9 million. We haven't talked about Bremner, which was the, what I think at the last election was the $4 billion gorilla in the room that we've not even talked about today. The fact is, we have to look inside ourselves. We spend a lot of money on consultants. We spend a lot of money that we don't have to spend. If and when elected, and I said the same thing last time, we have 8 councillors, 1 mayor. I think we have to, going forward, embed the council into the different departments of the organization and look to see how we can not spend more, but spend more efficiently by spending less on consultants. We have the in-house technical capabilities to provide the services we need. I see no need for it, the outside consultants. So it's not a matter of dipping into our reserves. It's a matter of just being more efficient as a civil engineer by trade, construction manager, by current profession. We have to live within our means, as my household does. I bring in $100. I spend $95. I put $5 away for a rainy day. And that's what we have to continue to do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. The next question, I suppose, flows logically from what several of you have included in your answers, and that is, to each of the candidates, what is your position on the multi-purpose ag and rec facilities being discussed in Strathcona County? And we'll begin with Annie McKittrick, please.
I attended some of the initial session around the facility, and what it has ended up to be was very different from when I attended the session and my understanding of it. As I mentioned before, I think it's time for us, given the pandemic, and that we rethink what we want to spend our money on, that we put projects aside, and that we review this project so that it is more in keeping with a very sound business plan that will not see continuous operational dollars be needed for its operation in the years to come. I think it's a great idea to promote the horse community in Strathcona County. I just don't think that this project should happen in this time and age with the price that it has belonged to. So to summarize, I would very much review the project and to put it aside until it's a better time financially, and also to reduce its scope. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. And now we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Well, thank you. My position is simple. It's the project has gone wildly out of control under the current mayor's watch. I think it started at about 20 million in the former council, then it was 31, and now it's 70 and climbing, and nobody seems to know how to control that. I support the project conceptually. The $31 million model made sense to me. It was everything we needed. I was on the board of Northlands for several years, so I'm very familiar with ag facilities and the revenue opportunities and what they provide. And with Northlands diminishing, it did make sense for us to move ahead with that $31 million model. But I mean, now we just have an out-of-control monstrosity, which includes a polo field, I'm told. I'm not sure how much polo we would have going on in Strathcona County. And then I found to my dismay that the Strathcona Vintage Tractor Association, which has been on the Bremner land for a number of years, and I was involved with getting that together with them along with Jackie Fensky at the time. And now they're being moved off. They're being evicted from the land that they've had their tractor pull on for how many years, because it doesn't fit with the county's vision for what the ag facility is supposed to be. So my position is very clear. Back into the $31 million envelope that it leapt out of, and use the $40 million for rural internet, seniors activity, retrofits, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't make any sense.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And now we'll hear from Al Beal.
Thank you. This is a prime example of why we need, as a county council, to lead our administration in developing policies and procedures that can keep our spending under control. We do it in private industry. I've done it in the oil industry, and it's not a secret. We have to get things under control, and we have to be the leaders to do that. And developing proper processes and methods of getting these projects underway is what we seriously have to do. And it's not a secret, it's not hard, but we need the leadership and direction from the county council to lead our administration in developing these type of processes so that we can get our spending under control. The concept of these projects are great. It's just a matter of getting the prices under control. We got to control our consultant spending. They will spend money like you wouldn't believe, because I've had that experience, and we need project managers that can put the thumb on there and control all of our spending on all of our projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. And now we'll hear from David Dixon.
This ties into an election promise made 4 years ago by whomever. People will say what they want to hear. The fact is, the people that would use that facility represent a very moneyed class in Strathcona County. We're talking about Strathcona County being very inclusive. So a promise was made 4 years ago to progress that facility, and that actually got somebody a lot of votes. That's something that's not talked about, but is the truth. And as Dave Quest said, at $30 million, it made sense. It's ballooning out of control now. That ties into the fact that it could, if reasonably managed, be an attractive facility adjacent to other things. We don't need a polo field, but we could use it as a multicultural. We could use it, as Dave said, as a tractor pull venue. If we were to open it up to more inclusive use facility as opposed to a agricultural facility, it would make sense. But we do have to get the costs under control. And that ties into, again, the other question, which I'm surprised nobody's talking about, which is the development of Bremner. As Dave said, the tractor people have been displaced for that development. I don't think we need a planned community for 30 to 50,000 people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And now we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Well, thank you for the question, and I'm going to speak in plain English on this question. I'm not going to talk about putting things on hold or supporting them conceptually. We are both an urban and rural community. Our rural needs have to be looked after. I supported the facility to the tune of $31 million plus any grant money that becomes available. I've been consistent on that from the beginning, and I've put forward 2 resolutions to cap it at $31 million. So I'm ahead of the pack on that one, and plus any grant money. Secondly, it should be for local users first. That's how it has to be designed around. And thirdly, make it expandable. If there's a great business opportunity there, make it expandable. Now, let me do some fact checks with you. There was a comment that we're not using priority-based budgeting. In 2019, we were awarded as one of the top 10 communities out of 350 in North America by the people that do priority-based budgeting. So if anyone's telling you that we're not using it, they better tell the PBB people, because they're giving us awards on it. Another fact check, SVTA, the tractor people weren't evicted. We're trying to find a solution for them while the multi-purpose agricultural facility was being planned. But that's a very important group in our community, and they've been looked after, and they will continue to be looked after. Thirdly, there's no polo field out there. Just want to keep the facts straight here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. The next question is, if you are elected, what will you do to ensure inclusivity, safety, and awareness for Strathcona County's LGBTQ1A2+ residents? And we'll begin with Dave Quest.
Well, we have a local group, Altview, that I think they would be the first people to sit with, and anybody else in the LGBT to clearly understand what their needs and you know what kind of supports that they need, what kind of facilities, if that happens to be the case. But I think it's just critically important that we acknowledge and support that community. And work together with them to make them feel whatever it is they need to feel safe and inclusive. I am a big supporter of that movement personally, and would be happy to sit with all of them to understand what they need. And it is something that we have not managed to achieve thus far, as I understand it from talking to some of that group.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And now we'll hear from Al Beal.
Good question. I have friends and family that are in that community, and I'd ask them how they feel and what changes need to be done here locally to make them feel safe. I'm a firm believer that there should be no discrimination against anybody for any reason, and I think we need to put forward the attitude that all people need to be respected with dignity, and we should accommodate everybody, whether in that community as well as all communities, and treat all people equally and fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. And now we'll hear from David Dixon.
Good question. The fact is, my son is gay, and I've had no problems with that. I've known that all of my life. He's known that all of his life. I have 2 children. Actually, I have 3 children. You know what? I talk to him all the time about it. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. But he doesn't feel that he's being discriminated against in any way living in our community. It's something that until you sort of walk down that aisle, you really never will experience yourself. So I think it's actually kind of unfair to ask a person who is not in that community to feel how they should be in that community. It's kind of a strange situation, because until you walk a mile in somebody's shoes, you really can't walk that mile in somebody else's shoes. So as I said, my son is comfortable with the way he lives, the way with I live. And in the last election 4 years ago, we talked about this, and I think in the last 4 years, things have changed a lot. I mean, everybody is more accepting of everybody in society. It's not really a us and them anymore. It's just a we. And going forward, I think it'll only get better and better. it's just life now. Around the world, it's not a different society. It's a part of society that, as with COVID, we will grow with and embrace.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And now we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Thank you, Terry Lynn. Well, inclusivity and diversity is very important to Strathcona County. It's one of our goals in our overall plan. We do celebrate diversity and inclusion. We've come a long way. We still have many more miles to go. I personally fully support it. It's first of all the right thing to do. Secondly, we're dealing with public money. I mean, everybody that contributes to public coffers and that's part of society gets a fair shake. Some of the things we're doing concretely is actually Strathcona County is a member of a municipality, an organization of municipalities that does support diversity and inclusion. So that is a tangible step we've taken. We do support AltView, which is a local organization with funding. We celebrate Pride Month. And we also have very strong support for our family and community services. So we have made very important concrete steps going forward on this file. I still think there's many more miles to go, as I've said, and I'll be there supporting it all the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
I really appreciate the question because our community has changed, but there are still acts of violence towards people who are members of the LGBTQ plus community, as there are acts of violence and hatred to our Muslim community. I know that the county has come a long way since a number of years ago to explore diversity, to hopefully change some of its personnel policies and some of its practices to make sure that all communities, everyone feels welcome and safe, not only as staff from the county, but also in the community. I would like to see a greater emphasis on the fact that as a community we're diverse, that we seek to have representation of various communities on all of our committees and the way that we portray people when we do advertisement or communication. I totally agree with Dave that we should really work with that community to understand how they don't feel safe, and also work with the RCMP and the law enforcement officers in the county to make sure that they understand some of the issues that community has.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. Our next question tonight, in recognizing the 94 Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, if you were elected, what actions would you work on to implement as mayor? We'll begin with Mr. Beal.
To be really honest with you, I'm not aware of what those are, and so I'm really not going to comment on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. And from David Dixon.
The Truth and Reconciliation, Canada is a very, very old country. Before it was called Canada, we didn't know what it was called, but when we came over, and we being traditionally a European society, I'm not really sure who the first settlers were, but they came here 300, 400, 500 years ago, and there was an indigenous population living here. Unfortunately, we, through whatever acts, or 400 or 500 years ago, we displaced them. We put them on reservations. We did atrocious acts. Look at the residential school tragedies that are coming to light now. It's not an apology needed. It's actually acceptance that an injustice was done. But the reconciliation of that justice is actually a very, very difficult question. We do have to engage with our First Nations because they were the First Nations. But going forward, we do have to accept that there's no us and they. We have to become one, as with immigrants, as with the LGBT community. We're a diverse society, and we have to learn to live together because we're not going anywhere. The world is a very small place, and there has to be a place for everybody. So let's find that happy spot where everybody can live freely and not fear for their safety, and And that's kind of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, this is somewhat like the previous question in that we have traveled a long ways in Strathcona County, but we have a lot farther to go. And we can't rest on our laurels. It's true, though, if we compare ourselves to our peers who are leading, we're going to continue to do that. Why do I say we're leading? Well, first of all, we have a very strong relationship with the Treaty 6 and also local Indigenous nations. And under their advisement, with them leading, with them advising, we've updated our land acknowledgement. We now have the Indigenous flags in Strathcona County Hall. And those aren't just symbolic. Those actually speak to the Indigenous groups, and it's something they've asked for. More importantly, we are actually have put forward a resolution and we are implementing the TRC recommendations at a municipal level. That's a fact. We were the first community in the region to declare September 30th as a public holiday, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We had events out at Strathcona Wilderness Center. I attended them. And the key going forward is going to be education. We'll be continuing to educate our staff around these important steps to implement. So again, great progress and many more miles to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And now we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
Well, I would like some time for the municipality not to only take credit for the things that are happening within the municipality, but to recognize that a group of citizens from the Strathcona County Diversity Committee and initiated a lot of these actions towards the reconciliation with the Indigenous communities and also then also working with the LGBT community. And I think that's what's missing in the county is the lack of acknowledgement that we actually have Indigenous people, Métis people, and others that need to be listened to and put in leadership. That it's not only what happens within council and the staff, but that the members of the community that work on these things need to be recognized. So I did go to the September 30th event at the Wilderness Center, which I thought was very well organized, and I'd like to put a kudos to the staff who organized it, including Jean Fung. I didn't see anybody else. I only saw one councillor, elected councillor, and myself and a few other candidate councillors were there. I also went to Festival Place that night that had an amazing show of three different Indigenous singers and performers, and there was only 20 people there. So I think we have a long way in our community, not only to talk and have policies, but really show our commitment to the TRC by our action. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. And now we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Well, thank you. I think a place to start as a county as a whole is to do more to educate and communicate with our county residents what a rich Indigenous history we actually have in this county. Some of the migration through the Beaver Hills area, for example, we've actually had, they say, a very rich history in the county. A few years ago, my wife Fiona had the opportunity when she was on council to attend a blanket ceremony, and she was so moved that day about what she learned and connecting with some of our Indigenous people. We need to be so sensitive to what they've been through. I mean, the residential schools situation is absolutely heartbreaking. And so I think that we need to understand that, embrace our Indigenous history, and really nurture those relationships with our Indigenous people, and implementing the 94 recommendations, work with them on how that works best for them and in this community. But I think we get a lot out of making sure that Strathcona residents really understand the rich history that we have in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. Our next question this evening: what are your plans to curb the increase in neighborhood crime in Strathcona County? We'll start with David Dixon.
We always preface it by saying that's a good question because it gives us a few minutes to get our thoughts in order. I did not realize that neighborhood crime was on the increase in Strathcona County. The reason it is on the increase may be the fact that there are more homeless people in the community. That traditionally tends to be the reason for breaking and enters. I've had my garage broken into a couple of times in the last few years, which I haven't experienced in the 15 years I've lived here. So I'm not really sure how we can decrease it. But it kind of goes back to the first question about the person who burnt the facilities down, who burnt the six businesses down. If there is an element of society that has to resort to that, generally for survival, and it's generally to feed a habit that may not be traditionally available or addiction driven. To prevent it and to minimize it, we have to offer care facilities to those people that see necessary to generate income by breaking and entering into other people's residences.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon, and we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Thank you, Terry Lynn. Let me start out by saying I am not a defunder of police. I support our local RCMP, and they do a very good job. In fact, and I agree with you, there are certain areas and certain types of crimes that have seen an increase, but overall, crime is down by 11% in Strathcona County, and in the major categories, personal offenses and things of that nature, it's down. Now, some will point to, for example, Edmonton and say, well, they're down 17%. Yeah, but Edmonton starts at a much, much higher base. Their violent offender crimes went up 27% in 2020, so they better come down a lot more. We've hired a new superintendent in Strathcona County. She's very forward-thinking, and we're going to see more community-based policing efforts coming forward. We did have a major crime in Strathcona County recently. We had a drive-by shooting. Very unusual. I worked very closely with our RCMP on that file, and we were very successful in coming to a successful resolution in dealing with it. So I think we're on the right track here, and I continue to support our RCMP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank, and we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
So urban planners know that the way that you build housing and you build subdivision can help to reduce crimes, and I'm pretty sure that the county observes these rules about decreasing crime in the subdivision by the way you see trade house and garage and so on. But I think that's one of the things that we could probably improve in the county. I understand that we got rid of the bicycle patrols in the summer, then went on bicycle from neighborhood and neighborhoods, and could see more quickly some of the street crimes or some of the break-ins and enters that happened because they were right there on the ground. We have to remember that in our community we have no homeless shelters, we have no detox beds, we have very little affordable housing, and so I think if we started having more of these services that to support people who are either addicted or are homeless, then I think it will go a long way towards starting to decrease some of the housebreaking and some of the street crimes that we see. I am very excited by having the new RCMP officer, and I would hope to work with her to have more community policing and to bring back the bike patrols. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick, and we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Thank you. It is a significant problem here, and okay, so Edmonton's down 17% and we're down 11%, and apparently there's all kinds of reasons for that, but many communities have seen a much greater decrease in crime. And let's face it, these decreases were because of COVID. It's because people were locked away, and it was generally, you know, not an environment that's really suitable for crime. But and I don't believe in defunding the police either, but basically the enforcement piece is the end of the story, and the beginning of the story are various social and addiction situations that we're not dealing with. And as I had mentioned earlier, we've got 5 addictions beds in a community of 100,000 people. I mean, that's way short of where we need to be. So we need increased financial support for family and community services, for the not-for-profits that provide these services. And again, we have to start dealing with the situation at the beginning where things are going wrong in people's lives. The answer is not the end where we take them away in handcuffs and convict them. And so I think as a community, we all need to work towards that goal. But it's coming out of people having distressing situations in their lives where they simply aren't financially able to look after themselves, or maybe fund their addiction if that's the case.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And now we'll hear from Al Beal.
Okay, I'd like to address the previous question that I bypassed a little bit. I have 4 grandkids that are of Indigenous descent, and they have cousins of Indigenous descent. And the reason I don't have any issues with or problems with this is because I treat them like anybody else in my family, and we don't look at them as somebody different than anybody else. They're totally integrated into our society, so I have a hard time comprehending how anybody else can think of them as a separate group that needs separate issues. But so on the crime issue in the county, we've experienced vandalism at our own place, and I think we should work with the RCMP and develop a community awareness program and try to figure out how we can best as a community work together with the police force in reducing our crimes, and because they know what's going on, and they also know what kind of measures that we can take as individuals in reducing the probability of these incidences from happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. There's a common theme from a number of questions tonight that I'm trying to articulate into a useful question, and I think it has mostly to do with the urban-rural divide, and I think all the candidates are aware of the sort of continuing stress point around rural versus urban services and representation. For example, the question, with the urban and rural split nationally, provincially, and within our county, how with 5 urban and 3 rural councillors can the rural voice and issues ever be heard and addressed? And related to that, with the expansion of Ardrossan, what is your plan? What is your transit plan? Can you outline your plan to ensure that rural residents have continued and improved access to Edmonton for work, school, and leisure? So recognizing that's a big topic, I'll hear first from Mr. Frank.
Thank you, Terry Lynn. Well, we are an urban and rural community, and I'm very proud of that, and I govern with that in my mind every day. And it's one of our strengths. The municipal term is we're specialized. We have both urban and rural areas. It's actually a model that every other municipality envies, because we have a huge land base that goes with that, and we've been very successful with it. We have 2 large industrial zones. They're the pride of the county, the Strathcona Industrial Association, the Alberta Industrial Heartland Association. We have to respect our rural residents. We need strong representation, and the system has worked well. It takes personal commitment from the councillors that aren't in the rural areas and from the mayor, and I've had no problem doing that. The last thing I want to be said about me when I no longer am in this position is that he didn't represent all parts of the county. So it's one of our strengths, and we have to realize that, and that's why I spoke very strongly of that multi-purpose agricultural facility and stepped up to the plate on it. Now, transit. We're going to have on-demand transit. That's going to be more coverage, more cost, or less cost, and more convenience. We do have mobility busing to rural areas. It's been very successful, and this is something I'll continue to work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And we'll hear next from Annie McKittrick.
Well, I'm glad the question is asked, because I think it's easy to minimize the fact that rural residents do feel that there is less services and that they have access to, for paying the same mill rate, they have access to less opportunities than urban residents. So thank you, whoever has asked a series of questions. There's no transit really to rural areas, and I would really like to see if we can explore the possibility. As I worked on a project in the County of Newell where we looked at the possibility of having services once a day or so from some of the hamlets in the County of Newell, and we could maybe look at having some kind of small bus transit system into Drawson, Josephburg, or South Cooking Lake, for example. I think it's also important that the mayor sees themselves as neither representing the urban and the rural area, but representing Strathcona County as a whole, and ensuring that the voice of the rural residents, even though there's only 3 rural councillors, is there, and that their needs are not met. And this is what I would do as a councillor. The other thing, I would really suggest that all councillors spend a lot of time in the rural areas and discover the diversity of sites in the rural areas.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick, and now we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Okay, thank you. Well, my background, was raised in Ardrossan. I had a General Motors dealership in Tofield where many of my customers were from the rural county. And so I have a very clear understanding of many rural issues that perhaps an urban mayor may not understand firsthand, and many relationships in the rural county. So there are a number of things that that we haven't done. So it's true. So if you live in Sherwood Park, you likely have high-speed internet. But if you live in Hastings Lake or much of the rural county, you don't. And I just think of the kids that were struggling out there in the rural county with distance learning because their internet was too slow. I mean, what an incredibly difficult situation for a young person to have to deal with. So, I mean, the county can be fibered for, or 5G, I'm told, for about $17 million. We're prepared to spend $40 million extra on an ag facility. Yes, and you can call that, rural, but the $70 million doesn't really make so much sense to our rural folks either. So I'm very empathetic to the needs of rural, and I have to agree to some point that rural residents have not received the level of service that they deserve, and rural internet is at the top of that list.
Thank you, Mr. Quest, and now we'll hear from Al Beal.
Yes, our rural community does need a better transportation model. We have a very good park and ride model that goes to the university, Grant MacEwan, and downtown Edmonton. And we could adopt a park and ride model for some of our outlying areas like Collingwood Cove or South Cooking Lake or Drawson. So there are many things that we can look at and think outside the box as to how we can improve our transportation. We need to improve some of the roads that are out there. So I think we have the opportunity. We have a lot of empty buses running around town. So I think we can take some of the resources from that and put it into a park and ride type of model in our rural community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. And now we'll hear from David Dixon.
Again, good question. That ties into my 3 T's, transportation, trash, and transit. The fact is, 4 years ago, we did have some political impetus to meet in the smaller communities, Josephsburg and Drawson, Cooking Lake, Hastings Lake. And I'd suggested that over the last 4 years, which unfortunately didn't happen, but it should have, I was suggesting that one council meeting once a month is held in the rural areas, which would attract both the local and rural residents to participate in the electoral process, meet the councillors, introduce themselves, and in a more personal way, let the 9 members of council know what are the unique needs of the rural residents. That kind of ties into the regional transportation system. We do spend a lot of money on, and we did spend a lot of money, and we continue to spend a lot of money on big buses that go downtown. Right now, unfortunately, during COVID, pretty well empty. If we were to participate in a regional transportation facility, we would be able to better service with smaller buses the smaller communities. The last thing would be make the roads better. I would encourage that we develop a bike path from the smaller communities into town. As an avid cyclist, the roads I ride on are not user-friendly. We have to develop that and ahead of inclusivity.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. The next question, many county facilities are not set up well for people with disabilities. Many people with hearing impairment feel they do not have access to live council broadcasts. If you're elected, will you commit to resolving that situation, and if so, what is your solution? We'll hear first from Annie McKittrick.
I'm so glad that these questions are being asked tonight. And so, yes, I am very interested in committing to ensuring that everyone in the county can hear and be involved in any council or committee that the municipality has. I have to agree that we haven't been very good about taking care of people with disability. I would love to see, for example, some guidelines for developers so that they build houses that are accessible for people with wheelchair, or that the bathrooms can be then in the bathroom you can install a bar for people who may need them. When we build our homes and we don't build them so anyone with disability can stay in their homes, then we're not an inclusive community. So I commit to it. I think that we have to explore the possibility of having interpreters for the deaf and the hard of hearing at our council meetings, and that we review how we provide services so that people with disability can fully participate in our community.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick, and now we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Well, first of all, I have no idea why our council meetings wouldn't also be supported with sign language for our hearing impaired. I don't think we have done a very good job with respect to accessibility. One of the things I'm thinking of is perhaps for businesses that are replacing doors, for example, that there be maybe a tax break, or perhaps some assistance with making their access appropriate for the disabled. I think, again, we spend a lot of time in this community building the next great sports facility, and not that I don't support great sports facilities, but we are a community that's evolved recently that puts projects before people, and it's time that we put people before projects with respect to supports for, well, for example, the disabled in our community. It is a priority. Like with everything else, the first step is admitting that we're not good at it, and the next step is taking action quickly and doing something about it.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And next we'll hear from Al Beal.
Well, we can, it's a very easy solution when it comes to the hearing impaired. We just have to make a decision and do it. Simple as that. And in our business community, one of the things we should be doing is in our development program, so especially with apartment buildings, we can designate a certain percentage of the apartments being built to accommodate people with handicaps. And I think this is, we have many things in our commercial buildings that are done with the building code, but we don't have a percentage of let's say, apartment buildings that require this. Single family homes, that would be a personal choice, but I think on apartment buildings we can have a few units that are designated for rental units that can accommodate people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. And now we'll hear from David Dixon.
There's three, I believe, elements to this. There's people that are mobility challenged, there's people that are visually challenged, and the people that are hearingly challenged. The hearing challenge is actually has to be done through a teletext type teleprompter. All council meetings should have that. We should also have a sign person. Most political organizations have that. If you watch C-SPAN or if you watch any American television, there's always a sign person on the side of the stage in a smaller box, signing the conversation. Mobility challenge is a bit of a different one. Mobility challenge in commercial buildings is covered by the building code. I served a term with the Technical Council of Alberta, and we looked at that, and it's interesting. We looked at Rexall Place and how many people or how many spots should be saved for people in mobility challenged, and there was a certain percentage allocated to it, which was incorporated into the building. So I think we're getting there. We can't provide universal access to everybody, but we do have to make the accommodations necessary to provide as large an accommodation as we can with the financial restraints associated with it.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And now we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Thank you, Terry Lynn. Well, let me first speak in plain English to the person who asked the question and say, yes, I do fully commit to supporting these initiatives. Why can I say that so clearly? Again, it's the right thing to do. But also, this is public money we're talking about. People with disabilities are also contributors to this community, and they have to be respected as such. It is one of the goals of our community. I know we can do a better job, and you're highlighting where we can, and I thank you for that. We are a member of a municipal association that does work on these issues. We have to work harder on them. We do have a family and community services division. This is part of their mandate, supporting people with disabilities. We do provide operating dollars to nonprofits that work in this area. So these are all tangible steps we take. Let me end by saying this is a personal matter to me in that I've worked with Inclusion Alberta for years. It's one of the projects that is important to me. And I've been able to hire a person with disabilities in my office, and she's worked out wonderfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. I just want to thank everyone who's sending in their questions. We're definitely doing our best to try to address as many of them as we possibly can tonight. And for those of you, if we do not get to your question, the error is mine. It's not a suggestion that the Chamber or the candidates don't consider your questions or your issues important. So you have my apologies if I don't get to your question tonight. The next theme in the series of questions that's been asked relates to business development in Strathcona County. Economic diversification is the key to the future prosperity of Strathcona County. The non-residential taxes from business and industry bring in 66% of all taxes. What would your plan be to ensure further investment, jobs, and increased tax assessment in the county? What do you see as the next industry you would like to come to Strathcona County? How will you achieve that? We'll start with Dave Quest.
I don't know that we really need to pick any favorites with respect to, what the next industry should be, because this is, it's evolving, but what we need to be is very open to those opportunities, because you're right, industry does pay 66% of our taxes, but the reality is most of that is heavy industry in non-renewables, and we know that that's not going to last forever. I think off the top of my head, I think there's great opportunity in the northern part of the county for biofuels, for example. And I know there's been discussion with various organizations about that, but that would fit nicely into what's happening in the industrial heartland. But with respect to small business, which we all know is the main driver of our economy globally, we found that out during COVID, how important that was, or how important small business is. And I think it's about having a very streamlined administration that's nimble and responsive to new business. So just for example, a tower for internet. It takes 6 months to get one approved in most municipalities. It takes 18 months to get it approved here. So a lot of it is about simplification around regulation, and again, Business Ambassador would be a big part of that.
Thank you, Mr. Quest, and now we'll hear from Mr. Beal.
So basically, in order to draw new business, one of the things we have to do and diversify is to have land available for businesses to build on. We do a great job on residential. We do a great job on retail, but we have a hard time with heavy commercial and light industrial business. So we, in our planning department, have to allow land opportunities for this type of development and low-cost land opportunities. It's that lack of availability for these businesses to come here is one of the costs that's associated with moving here. The other thing is that we got to reduce our red tape and bureaucracy and speed up the process for development. Time is money in business, and businesses can't afford to wait that long to make a decision. They will move to other municipalities, and we've seen that happen time and time again. In my business, they'll come to me and say, well, where should we go, and what's the length of time to get a building permit, and et cetera. And we're not exactly on top of the list here. So let's make the change. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Beal, and now we'll hear from David Dixon.
Strathcona County is a unique position in Alberta. We have access to non-renewables, as Dave Quest had indicated. I'm not sure how we're going to promote the introduction of small businesses, but the fact is, to have small businesses, you have to have people. And to have people, you have to have access to suitable transportation to get those people to those small businesses. The wages, let's take for example the Amazon warehouse that's going to be recently opened in the Leduc area. They actually made some accommodations to the transportation plan, allowing buses to go out there so the employees that may not necessarily be able to afford a car can actually work in that facility and have access to that facility quite easily through regional transportation. So, as I said earlier on, we have to amalgamate ourselves into a regional transportation plan, allowing any business to have access to a good public facility. Mechanically, the train tracks in the north part of town have to somehow be, we have to look at grade separation there. I know a lot of guys who work up in there, and that train that comes through at the most inappropriate time is really an impediment to our growth and development. So we have to work with CNCP to look at grade separation up there to allow that whole northern hemisphere to be developed for the heavy industry and potentially light industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon, and now we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Thank you, Terry Lynn. Well, business development and economic diversity, this is another one of my passions. I have a business and legal background. I worked in corporate Canada for many, many years. The question is around economic diversity. And I'm proud to say that we are evolving, and we are evolving quickly in this community, and we are all going to be the benefit of that, take the benefit of that. Diversity, we are now into petrochemicals. We have a $4 billion investment that was made during my term. We are now employing 12,000 people in our industrial zones and probably well over 30,000 indirect jobs. So diversity is here, and it's going to continue to come. Secondly, hydrogen is the fuel of the future. We are the hydrogen hub for Western Canada. It's happening now in our community. Now, we can't forget small, medium-sized business. They employ well over 35% of the workforce. We have to have a competitive tax structure, and we're going to continue to do that. We have to promote them through our economic development team. We have a very strong economic development team within Strathcona County. And tourism is another unexplored area. Local tourism is something else that we're working on. We have a 12-year tourism plan now. We've never had one before in Strathcona County. Let me end on development permits. You know, in February, the government put out some standards they wanted us to reach. We're already surpassing them. So we're doing very well in that area also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And now we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
I'm proud to have been part of a government that initiated a lot, some of the diversification projects in the industrial heartland, and I think there's still more opportunities for industries to use the feedstock produced in the industrial heartland or the Strathcona industrial heartland to create more projects. But I'm also aware that those projects are very much dependent on global capital markets and also policies that both the provincial and the federal government have. I think we've been ignoring some of the industries in our community. For example, we have quite a few residents and we have quite a bit of activity among the cultural centers. We don't just have festival plays, we have dance studios, we have a lot of musicians in our community, and I would like us to start highlighting some of these industries, businesses, as for growth. I also think we need to pay more attention to our agricultural sector. I would like to see a more emphasis put on small market farmers and the possibilities of building more processing plants and also the agro-tourism business. I agree that we're missing on a lot on tourism, and we often forget that we have an amazing park nearby, 2 parks, Elk Island and Blackfoot, where we could encourage people to come here before they go to these parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. I'm almost sorry to say, based on time, that this will be our last question of the evening. We're leaving behind questions from important topics such as climate change, how to deal with traffic noise and bylaw enforcement, problems with excessive traffic noise on Baseline Road from speeding after 8 p.m., support for the agricultural community in the surrounding areas, mental health beds and mental health supports in the community, how you will work with the other members of council to achieve your agenda, how you will communicate with residents and commit to communicating with residents. We're leaving behind a lot of topics that I regret I haven't been able to get to this evening. So I'm going to give a fairly broad question at the end, which is a little bit of an opportunity for you to touch on some other themes. Describe, in order of importance, the top 3 things that you hope to achieve in your first 100 days as mayor. We'll start with you, Mr. Beale.
Well, the first thing I would like to address is I would like to eliminate any medical discrimination against on all our tax-funded facilities. We have the option that the province has given us to operate at 1/3 capacity, and I think that is the route that I would prefer. The other thing that we got to do is look at all the potential roadblocks that we have in our administration in developing, getting permits through and everything else. That would be the second thing is reduce our time for permits. And the third thing I would like to do is see if we can, one of the other things is address the issue of discrepancies in some of our rural issues. Like we have many people that want to use ATVs and snowmobiles out in the rural areas, and they're not allowed to do that. And I think that's one of the issues that I'd like to address as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beale. And now we'll hear from David Dixon.
You said the first 90 days, usually it's the first 100 days, is a more global time frame they give people. I'd actually like to do, as I said, and I keep coming back to this transportation, trash, and transit. I'd like to take the 8 council members and myself and embed ourselves in the in-depth and the day-to-day financial business dealings of how we spend the $377 million or $1 million a day. We have to find some efficiencies. We have to work with local communities. We have to be nimble. We have to be quick. That might not be achievable in 90 days, but the council's mandate is over for 4 years. If elected, I would actually only serve for 4 years because I feel that there should be actually a cap on sitting on local council. I think it should be 2 terms at max, but that's a question for another day. So in the first 90 days, what I'd like to do is establish some committees that would look at how we can not increase tax, but decrease tax, provide better transportation, better policy analysis, lower the cost of doing business, and in fact actually make city council work with the employees and make it a more inclusive place to work, including all of the challenged members of society, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And now we'll hear from Rod Frank.
Thank you, Terry Lynn. Well, in the first 100 days, there's the top 3 areas that I will work on are going to be, first of all, safely emerging from COVID. That'll be front and center. We'll be following medical advice, making sure our community is protected and safe. That's what we've done for the last 20 months. We're going to continue to do that. Secondly, continuing to open up the economy. It's very clear that this is what's on people's minds: jobs. There's been a recent study done by a survey by Leisure, as I mentioned, and this is jobs, tax reductions, and creating economic opportunity is number 2 on my list. And lastly, number 3 is working in region. We live in a very complicated area in Strathcona County, in this region. There's 13 communities, there's a provincial government that we have to get along with and we have to understand. So, Mr. Dixon, you know, you talk about transportation, trash, and transit, and it's got a nice ring to it, but there's other things like recreation, parks, and culture, there's fire, there's police, and there's our in-region relationships, and we have to manage them. Edmonton is a very large community. I just want to say quickly on climate change, because that's one of the things you did bring up. We have strong economic zones, but we're also leading in reducing emissions, carbon capture, and cogeneration. So we're doing it in a way that's respecting the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And next we'll hear from Annie McKittrick.
Thank you for the question. I'm aware that I can't do anything as a mayor unless I have the support of council. So even though I'm not going to include it as one of my priorities, but what will be really important for me is that my priorities are also match the other 8 elected council members around the table. So one of my first priority is to review the budgets, to review the commitments that we have made, and to see how the budget fits in with the economic projection and the grants from the province. I would pay particular attention to the rural and the urban investment divide. My second priority will be to review the sustainability policies of the county and to see where they can be improved, and to especially work with the leaders in the industrial heartland, the Strathcona industrial area, to see how we can learn from them how to be a more sustainable community, since they are doing that for their industries. The third priority would be to invest in community, to ensure that the community feels heard, listened to by the council and by staff member, and that we really have found the best way to involve community in our committees. I've often said that I never like the word advisory in municipal committees, because it really means that your voice doesn't really matter, you're just providing advice. I would like the community to feel that they are heard and that their comments are important to our decision making.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. And now we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Well, job 1, and I don't think this happened in the beginning of the last term, is build a cohesive council. Understand what every new member of council and existing member of council, well, I guess they're all new technically, understand what drives them, understand what their passions are, understand what their priorities are, understand where their energy comes from. So everybody has their skills and their gifts and their talents. And I really want to understand what every member of council needs to be successful, and ensure that as mayor that I support those, support their vision, support their focus, make sure that everybody has sufficient airtime with respect to talking about their priorities. I know, for example, with the previous mayor, my wife Fiona, was very passionate about affordable housing, so the mayor pointed her to Heartland Housing. So I think that's job 1, is really understanding very quickly what drives every member of council and making sure that they have the opportunity to be successful in their own way. Job 2, community consultations. I already knocked on 11,000 doors, so I've got a pretty good head start on what residents' priorities are. And job 3, immediate COVID supports, mental health, and perhaps, and tax abatement or deferral for families that have been hit very, very hard by COVID. Those are my top 3 in the 100 days.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. Before we hear from the mayoralty candidates for their closing remarks, I'd like to thank each of the candidates for participating tonight, for letting their names stand forward, for dealing with the difficult circumstances that we have. Everybody would rather be meeting in person, of course. It's a lot tougher to connect with people remotely. So thanks for showing up and giving it your all to a non-audience except me. I'd like to thank the volunteers from the Chamber of Commerce tonight for all their hard work and for their assistance in pulling this off and making this event successful. And I would especially like to thank the residents who stuck with us and have attended and watched and participated with us this evening and sent in their questions. These forums help us to get to know all the candidates here in Strathcona County, to better understand their positions on the important issues leading up to the election. I'd ask everybody to remember to vote on Monday, October 18th. Please encourage others to do the same. Each of the candidates will now have 3 minutes for their closing remarks. I'll again draw your attention to the timekeeper to my left, who will hold the yellow card and let you know you have 20 seconds as a warning, and a red card when your speaking time is concluded. We'll hear first from Rod Frank.
Well, thank you, Terry Lynn, for moderating, and thank you for everybody who's running for mayor, and thank you for everybody who's running for council. You've let your name stand. Tonight, we've heard a variety of opinions on a diverse range of topics. I'd like to take some time in these closing remarks to reaffirm where I stand. With respect to capital projects, my position is to build what we need when we need it. We are both an urban and rural community, and we benefit from that. A rural facility, a seniors hub, and a field house will all be very important going forward. They're priorities, but they will be staged to be built at a pace our community can afford. I will continue to work with youth on their needs. This includes affordable housing and transportation and support for mental health services. Our county mental health support services are expandable based on demand. We are implementing on-demand transit, which will provide more coverage, more convenience, and less cost, saving over $500,000 in the first 18 months. In contrast, those promising free transit, nothing's free, folks. They're adding $4 billion per year in additional costs. That translates to a 2% hike on your tax bill. We are working on a home rebate incentive program for energy retrofits. It will access federal and provincial funding for energy savings and renovations. We're going to continue to provide over $1 million annually to nonprofits for social service operating dollars. We are not in a provincial government situation here. I'm the one that has experience working with council, but there's no party discipline here. Council is composed of 9 hardworking individual thinkers that collaborate to make the best decision for our community. But sameness is not a virtue. People think independently and they bring what they know to the table, and we have to respect that. But we shouldn't be looking for block voting here. Importantly, business needs to be supported going forward. In my last term, we landed $4 billion in new investment. This creates jobs. It will continue to create jobs. I mentioned emerging industries like hydrogen and petrochemicals that are coming to our county. As for financial performance, my record is built on the best set of books in the province. 95% of your tax dollar goes to services, not to banks to pay debt. Our budget is balanced and sustainable, and spending increases are forecast to be less than the rate of inflation over the next 4 years. A final word on the elephant in the room, which is COVID. My position since the outbreak of the pandemic has been to keep residents safe and to sustain an open local business. We will follow medical advice. Folks, we live in a great community. We live in the best community in Alberta. We have a great future ahead of us. There's a lot of doomsayers out there. Don't listen to them. Let's keep the momentum going by keeping the same leader. Don't change horses in midstream. I'm Rod Frank. Please vote me for mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And now we'll hear from Dave Quest.
Terry Lynn, to you and the chamber for doing this this evening. Just to cover a couple of items, just in response to Mr. Frank's comment. Yes, I do believe that we need to do something different with transit. The buses are empty. There's often one person on them, and that's the driver. So I know we have green buses, but it's not a green bus if there's nobody on it. And so I do propose free transit for students and seniors, not the commuter ones, not the double deckers. There's revenue streams there. But, you know, our transit is subsidized, I think, 80% already. No tax increase would be required. You know, we got a $377 million budget. Our spending has gone up every year, way ahead of inflation and growth. The budget in 16 years ago, I think, was $140 million. Now it's $377 million. So there's plenty of revenue there. I propose no tax increases. But I do propose reprioritizing of those dollars. 66% of, as you mentioned, 66% of our revenue comes from heavy industry. So we can pat ourselves on the back for having low taxes, but we should have low taxes. That is an immense subsidy that most municipalities do not enjoy. Why do I believe I'm the best choice for mayor of Strathcona County? I have the experience. I have the political experience at a higher level. I have the business experience. My wife was on council. My campaign manager was on council. I am surrounded with the brain trust of previous councils. I've lived in this county for 41 years, and we've all seen periods in our history where this county has been absolutely spectacular. This is not one of them. We can do so much better together. I have a vision for this community that not only has the best trail system, but it has the best social system. And not just great green spaces, but also have the best innovative green projects. And I refer to the retrofit project, energy retrofit project for some of our older homes. And how that would work is, you know, say you needed a new water tank or a new furnace, essentially the county would loan you the money for that. You do pay it back. It's not a gift. You pay it back on your property taxes over time. But think of the families that might step up and buy the latest and greatest in furnaces if they knew they didn't have to pay up front for that and could get some assistance with it. I want to see more investment in our residents, and I want to encourage and support our businesses. I'm a small business person on the ground. I understand what small business is going through and what they need. And we need to embrace our urban and our rural roots. On October 18th, or before, vote Dave Quest for a better future for Strathcona County for mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Quest. And now we'll hear from David Dixon.
Thank you again for holding this this forum and this venue. It's a unique venue. It's unfortunate that we're not meeting in person with a live audience. But the one advantage we do have is that anybody who's watching this now can go back and rewind to the start of the conversations and review the answers the five of us have given. I don't believe in having pre-prepared speeches because the fact is I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. When elected, I will be what you come with one mouth and two ears, and the fact is, because I have actually have 3 minutes to speak, I'm not going to take 3 minutes of your time. We need to have more inclusivity. COVID will through no effort on our or expenditure on our part, or I'm not sure how to say that, COVID will be beaten. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. It is a big problem right now, but time heals all wounds. The medical science will take care of it. Strathcona County is a great place to live in. It's not broken. There's no fundamental flaws in the finances. There's no fundamental flaws in the transportation facility. There's no fundamental flaws in where we live. But we do have to reduce the extravagant expenses that we may be potentially experiencing. Well, the fact is we're already experiencing them. We just have to figure out if we can afford to pay for them. We can't have champagne expenditures on a beer budget. So in this election, it's all about sincerity. It's all about electing 9 people that can work with each other in a community, cohesive. I still feel that once a month we should meet in the smaller communities, which would capture the rural accommodations. We could find out or be more accurately abreast of what they feel they need. It's a good place to live. Please vote. Vote for the person you feel is most sincere. As I said, no canned answers going forward. Please review this. Look at our answers. Look what we said. Look at the sincerity in our voices, and vote with your heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. And now we'll hear from Annie McKittrick with her closing remarks.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching this and to make an informed choice for who you will vote for in the municipal and council election. Council will have difficult decisions to make in the next few years as the downloading of responsibilities, freezing of grants, and reduction in supports from the provincial government impacts municipal budgets. The ongoing pandemic will continue to impact economic recovery in our municipality, the lives of residents, and the types of projects that we will be able to proceed with. As mayor, I will work with council to monitor the economic impacts and explore how municipal budgets need to be revised to support residents and businesses, and by advocating for Strathcona County to other orders of government. A review of capital and operational expenses will be needed. Tough decisions will have to be made. As mayor, I am interested in reviewing services to rural residents in general, with a focus on identifying what we may have missed or is currently inadequate. As we develop some of the hamlets, we also need to ensure that services are equally available. I have a number of priorities that I hope council will support, such as developing innovative and affordable housing projects and creating a seniors activity center supported by the municipality, but that is administered and run by seniors. I would also like to see more sustainability initiatives. My focus will always be on how residents can become personally invested in the services they use. In previous communities where I worked, board members of the community's different not-for-profit societies have met regularly to exchange information and collectively advocate for the needs they identify. As mayor, I would like to explore creating a gathering of our community's board members. My family, like many others in our community, represents the diversity of Canada. Strathcona County has become home to residents from around the world. We are home to people of all faith, ethnicities, socioeconomic levels, sexual orientations, ages, and abilities. As mayor, I will strive to ensure that all residents feel safe and free from acts of discrimination and have a voice in our community. I will work with the Truth and Reconciliation Task Force, Council, and our Indigenous and Métis residents to implement the TRC recommendations that are applicable to our community. On October 18, vote for an experienced, knowledgeable, and committed candidate for a mayor with a vision to lead the community into the future. Elect me, Annie McKittrick, as mayor of Strathcona County.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. And next we'll hear from Al Beal with his closing remarks.
Thank you, Terry Lynn. As mayor, one of the things I'd like to do first is to lead our county council in reducing and making our administration more efficient and more speedy and more and so that we can deliver services better to our residences and our businesses. I would like to reduce the roadblocks that many people are facing in their developments, and I have the technical and business capabilities of leading a council to do that. We have a large budget, and we know just by being more efficient, we could probably save 5–10% and still have all the services we need without raising any of our taxes, and then we still have some money left over. We talk about bringing new business to and jobs to Strathcona County, but one of the things that we're doing here is we have some medical discrimination policies in place, and many people will end up losing their jobs here at the county administration because they made a choice not to be vaccinated. And I think that is unfair, it's unconstitutional, it violates our Charter of Rights and the Nuremberg Code. It doesn't make sense for the county to take on extra liability when we do this, because the province has set minimum guidelines and we can follow them. We can reduce our capacity down to 1/3 on our public facilities, our tax-paying facilities, and they still will not even come close to being used. So first thing we'll do is eliminate medical discrimination in our our facilities. And so taking on legal liability will just add extra additional costs for these procedures. And lawsuits are expensive, and I wouldn't want to go there. Let the province take the liability. I'd also encourage the province to follow the Florida model. They have eliminated all restrictions, kept COVID deaths under control, businesses are flourishing, and families are having fun. So if we introduce vaccine passports, it's a slippery slope to losing our freedoms and our choices. Just imagine what life would be like if Rachel Notley or Justin Trudeau get a hold of that system. It wouldn't be good for Alberta, and it wouldn't be good for Strathcona County. We need a government that understands the technical and business sides of policies that affect our communities. So let's make a stand for freedom and choice. So on Monday, October the 18th, vote for Al Beal, vote for freedom, a vote for choice, and a vote for a brighter and better and freer tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. This is normally the part of the forum where I invite everybody to give a round of applause to all the candidates. So we'll have to deal with virtual, we'll have to deal with virtual applause tonight. I do want to thank all the candidates for coming tonight, for their attendance, for their commitment to the process. And of course, I want to thank all the viewers who are sticking with us till the end. This concludes tonight's official agenda. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night. Stay safe, everyone. Take care. Thank you.